8 o'clock, we're gonna get started on our Board of Commissioners meeting. The invocation and pledge today will be with Zach Crotch, if you'll lead us, Mr. Crotch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we would bow our heads. God, we come to you today as a board to do the business of the people. We hope that you will guide us in the right direction and do what's right for our people. God, we also want to thank you for protecting our law enforcement and first responders yesterday in a tragic scene. And our hearts and prayers go out to the individual that was injured that works for our county and protects and serves us, as well as the victim. We hope that they and their families can recover well. God, we also want to thank you for all the many blessings that you have given this county, the beautiful county that you have given, the many opportunities that the state and the feds have come in to help create better parks and better things for our citizens to do. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know, Mr. Yates, one of our commissioners, is out today, and I have a motion to have him excused. Do I have a second?
So moved. Second. Whichever you need.
We do this verbally, please?
Okay, next item is recognitions. I don't have any listed here.
Mr. Chairman, we got a cast of characters out there. We have EDC Board, we have the Lexington School Board, we have the Board of Elections,
Mayor Byram.
the mayor, well, he's representing the EDC this morning.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So I think that's the
Sheriff
group that are here.
Richardson.
We have the sheriff here with us, so, we welcome everybody, so.
Well, that's
thank you.
about everybody, so everybody's a special guest.
And we also have the staff from the Lexington City School Board. I see Dr. Wells out there with her folks, so.
Well, we welcome all of you. It's gonna be a short meeting, hopefully, and, we'll get you out of here in just a little while. If you want to speak at public address, you still got time to register. We'll do that right after the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes that we need to make to the agenda this morning? Okay, can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Cast your vote.
Who?
Mr. Elliott.
Oh.
All the votes are in. That motion carries 6-0.
Okay, is anyone for public address?
No, sir.
Good, Barney's not here. Items for decision, we got the continued discussion on the, personnel resolution, Mr. Maynard or whomever.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm not going to read Drake's profile again. It's rather long. I'll just say 35 years of human resources and management experience and turn it over to him from here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Let me thank the commissioners for an opportunity to have yet another wonderful meal last night at Honey Monk's. Thank you very much. I'm here at your pleasure to respond to any questions you might have about personnel resolution. Above and beyond, I can do whatever you want to do. Just please let me know what you're looking for.
Okay, if I recall now, on the last one, we had several items or several.
Right, there were some things that, there was some
Several points,
discussion
yeah.
on, and, give you a chance to look over it and come back, and I think, did we make any changes at all?
Yeah, we did. We're gonna add a section in the back called an appendix where we're going to reference those policies, tell who owns them, who will have responsibility for maintaining them, and then putting a hyperlink because we're choosing to go electronic with the resolution as well. If we do print any handbooks, which we're trying to leave a nice green footprint and print as little as possible, but we'll also print those policies to go into the back of any resolutions that we hand out.
And does that include the concern I had over
Yes,
Garth? Okay.
it does.
And I thought Casey.
It directs basically who owns the policy, which is county manager's office essentially, and who is the administrator of the policy, who to see if you've got problems.
I think I was somewhat confusing last time. My main concern was that somebody or some entity placed that before HR. And so if we're gonna remove it, we just need to make sure that we designate where it goes to, or the people have an option to find out where to go to receive the proper answers, and that was basically what I was trying to say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think this handles it very nicely. It tells people who owns it, who's gonna be the one to be responsible for administering it, and then gives them the location where they can find it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Great job.
Are there any other concerns that anybody has? Is your concern?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Maynard? All right, what are we gonna get tomorrow?
Well, I guess
A
if
motion
there's
to-
no concerns and you're good with what you've seen, I guess we would ask that you put it on the agenda, next Tuesday night's agenda. We can either put it on deliberation or we can put it on consent, and if there is some that comes up, you can always pull it off. It's the board's choice.
I'm
Okay,
okay with consent.
Well, I'm okay
Yeah.
with consent.
I am too.
Make a motion, we put it on a consent agenda for next Tuesday night.
You can just do that by common consent, so if that would be okay?
Yeah.
Don't talk so fast.
I'm sorry. Do it by common consent.
Okay.
okay,
That's what a master clerk does, isn't it?
okay.
I got old
You
ears.
did a good
can't talk
job.
that fast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the presentation by Craig Goodson and the ECD Board of Trustees on the, product development planning and WFD planning. Hello, Craig,
Need this thing?
you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, appreciate your time, today to talk a little bit about economic development. First, I'd like to recognize some of my EDC board members, if y'all would stand up, including you, Mr. Chairman, is on our board, and I appreciate them coming. They've been everybody's been a great support, and advisor to me and our group to help drive economic development so that we can continue to create and expand jobs in Davidson County, good paying jobs.
Huge, thank y'all.
Then one more person back there trying to hide, Reese Smith. She drives this train. I'm up front doing these things, but if it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be able to do things as well as we do. So if you would stand up, I appreciate it. Thank you. So the board has been working hard on economic development issues, and the economic development landscape is changing and continues to change, and the fact of this long extended growth in the United States and the low unemployment rate is putting more different things at the forefront in economic development. So we've been working on these things. We've been looking at what we need to do. We thought it was important that we just give you a short presentation and bring you up to date on what we're working on. So if you would get to the first slide. So these are the top couple things that every state, every county, every city is working on in the United States. And to let you know, there are over 3,500 economic development related organizations in the United States, and this is what we're all doing right now. So workforce development has come to the forefront, as you can imagine. between, the low unemployment rate and because of the low unemployment rate, it's driving automation, it's driving other innovations, which is creating a skills gap, is what everybody calls it. And so there's a lot of initiatives going on to figure out how we shift our workforce so that every economic development organization, where we're helping companies expand or bringing new companies in, we can create better paying jobs with better benefits, with people that have higher skills, that are transferable. And so it's just creating another priority for economic development. So one of the big things we face right now is just student and parent attraction for manufacturing jobs, and that's a whole another teaching part of what we need to do and how we do things. The next thing is we need best-in-class facilities to be able to do what we want to do. Just like old manufacturing isn't what we have now. We have new, clean manufacturing. We need new, clean buildings that attract people, that are attractive to companies. A lot of that is perception. But perception in a lot of ways drives reality, so we have to be involved in that. We need to get our private industry more engaged with, quite frankly, with curriculum, with assistance, with support, with being more integrated within education, whether it's K-12 or community college. And then we need funding support because as y'all are keenly aware of, every great idea generally stops when there's no funding. So that has become one of the number one talked about things in the United States. But the second is product development. And, I would have told you 5 years ago by far that product development trumps everything. And it still trumps most things, but it doesn't trump workforce development and education anymore. And that's kind of where we're moving, and that's the landscape that we're working in now. So, the areas that have fully served industrial parks, which we do, that have shell buildings in those parks, which we don't, are the ones that are at least getting the first looks for a lot of projects, especially the projects, the larger projects, manufacturing projects that we want to attract, those companies that are 200,000 to 500,000 square feet. Once you get up above that, it starts to look more like an Egger, where it goes from 1 million to more like 3 million in multiple phases and different kinds of things going on. The 1 million to 1.5 million square feet projects, a lot of that right now is e-commerce and will probably continue to be that way. So, if we'll go to the next slide. So as I said, private industries must be engaged, but government must be the ones and continues to be the ones that puts in place the best-in-class facilities that are needed, and whether that's local funding or state funding or federal funding or a combination of all of them in some cases. But I did want to give you some examples of some places that have put in place what we in the industry call best-in-class facilities for workforce development and education, and a lot of them are centered around in North Carolina and some in Virginia. They use tobacco fund money for their facilities. So and then the other part is just to continue the meaningful dialogue and engagement with parents and industry and students. Go to the next. Davidson County is blessed with a transportation network that allows us to, when we look at priority corridors for manufacturing development, and the priority is not driven by economic development, it's driven by what companies say they want. there are not a whole lot of places outside of major metropolitan areas that have the transportation corridors that we have. So they're either going through our county or they're close enough to our county that we might be able to take advantage of that. And so what the EDC is doing is looking at those priority corridors, trying to match up where the infrastructure is, so we don't just go look at something and find out, oh, well, we got to spend $50 million on infrastructure. So we're trying to look at those areas where we don't have to do that, but these are in general the areas where we're looking. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about Davidson County's major industrial park history. And I know all of y'all know this, but in 1992, a private developer bought the land that's now the Welcome Business Center, developed that park, and the county extended sewer at one point when Atrium, which originally was APC, located there. And then the park started to take off, and as you can see, investment from the time it began to 2006 was about $87 million, and the current investment value that we've seen from tax records is $100 million. And there's several thousand people employed in that park. So in 1994, Davidson Progress and the EDC made a presentation to the board to talk about a master plan that would result in 4 fully served industrial parks, each one of them having a minimum of 100 acres and having a shell building in each one of those. The commissioners approved the criteria for the parks that was submitted, and it was more about infrastructure and what was needed to create those parks. And then the commissioners noted that we should have a park created in Denton, Lexington, Thomasville, and northern Davidson County. So that was in 1994. In 1995, a partnership between the county, the city of Lexington, and Energy United created the Lexington Business Center. And Davidson Progress built the first shell building in that park. And that park was purchased by Diebold, and then the city of Lexington built a second building, and MEPLA purchased that facility, and the Energy United built a third building, the last building that was 100,000 square feet, and Border Concepts purchased that building. And Border Concepts, all of those buildings in some form were expanded, and Border Concepts actually expanded their last building, their building that they own this year. So as of 2019, we have 6 buildings in the Lexington Business Center with a current capital investment of $85 million, and once again, over 1,000 people working in that park. So 2002, the area that is now the I-85 Corporate Center area was designated as a corridor of economic opportunity in the county land use plan. So in 2005, the state approached Davidson County to talk about an area that could be a mega site. It was identified at the end of the time Duke Energy got involved. They did some studies in their service area. It got expanded across the state. And at the end of the day, that whole area, which was about 2,100 acres, was designated as probably the best place to have a mega site in North Carolina. Toyota looked at it. The project didn't happen. It went down to Alabama, Mississippi, and languished there for about 4 years and finally got built. But so we had all this property, so it seemed like it was something that ought to be continued to be pursued. The EDC actually got a grant from Commerce to start procuring property to create as big a park as we could down there. Thanks to the foresight of the county commissioners, they got involved, we added additional land, the land became 432 acres of what we have right now. We got a loan from the state to start extending the sewer, so, you know, it took time, but things were moving forward when Edgar came, and because of all the things that were in place and were happening, it gave Edgar the confidence that they could locate there, and that when they got to where they needed the infrastructure, we assured them that we would have all of that in place, and we have. We've extended the water, the sewer, the natural gas, the telecommunications. We with the help of North Carolina Railroad, we put in a $6.5 million rail access for them at no cost to the county, and so they are right now. They plan to be in their corporate headquarters by the end of this year, and have an opening in January. And then their manufacturing facility is actually a little bit ahead of schedule, so they're saying third quarter of 2020, they will be fully operational in phase one of their manufacturing facility, which will encompass $300 million at that facility. They've probably invested in their facility and other things they're doing locally. By that time, they will probably invested closer to $350 million, and they will employ, within probably 12 months of being operational, there'll be right now it looks like 425 people at least at that facility working, and making above the county average wage. Next slide, please. But just to give you an idea of what, you know, the companies that are making large capital investments right now are very risk averse. And I know you see a lot of things about large metropolitan areas, and that's one of the reasons you see that, because of low unemployment and other factors. The companies that are the most risk averse, and those are generally the manufacturing companies, their priority is first looking at the large metropolitan areas, and then their next thing they're doing is looking at the medium metropolitan areas, and then third on their list is the rural areas that are close to either or both of those. And strategically, we're blessed with being located right in a medium metropolitan area, and we're sandwiched in between two of the largest metropolitan areas on the East Coast, two of the highest rated on the East Coast, and two of the fastest growing in the East Coast. So, you know, as we see it, things continue to grow towards us, which gives us more and more reason to be optimistic about the growth in Davidson County, and the reason why we can be proactive and prioritize what we're trying to do, especially at the I-85 Corporate Center, to make sure that we're just not putting something out there. When we put something out there, we're trying to make sure that it's something that's going to be quality, it's going to be high wages, it's going to be high capital investment, and it's going to be manufacturing that will endure past recessions and ups and downs of IT and other things that some people that might be in risk of in the future when those things ebb a little bit. But I will, when I go back to the rural thing, I will give you a good example. Edgar, located here. They are building their facility. They're adding employees. They've never missed a beat on their construction. And so we're gonna have, I think we're gonna have, in a shorter time frame than they say, we're gonna end up with a $800 million capital investment, and we'll probably end up with over 1,000 jobs with Edgar. That being said, at about the same time, there was another large capital investment that was announced in the state, and it was not near it was in an urban area, a rural area. It was not near any large or medium metropolitan areas. They started grading. The chairman of the company died, and it looks like that project may be canceled. So A lot of that has to do with everybody else on the board revisited it and said, this may not be where we want to be. And they're a manufacturing company and they're risk averse. So that's the difference, and we think that will continue, and so we're gonna have more opportunities, or more better opportunities. That being said, let me once again repeat, 3,500 competitors out there trying to get the same projects that I'm trying to get. But to talk a little bit about product development, the number one thing that we see as far as having product, and the challenge we have is we do not have any modern manufacturing buildings in Davidson County. We're getting ready to have one with Genweld. That building will probably be could likely be bought by an existing company, one of several existing companies in Davidson County, before they even leave the facility at the end of the year. So when we do have one, it doesn't stay on the market long. But if we can go to the next slide. This is the challenge that we're facing. I didn't even include Mecklenburg County, but between Mecklenburg County and Alamance County, right now there are, from what I can tell, there are at least 24 speculative buildings being built. All of them have 30-foot ceilings. All of them, I think, but one on this list are over 100,000 square feet. And probably between the time I put this together and did this, probably a quarter to a third of them are probably already gone. There has been a lot of development in this region, and there's been a lot of activity and a lot of interest. The challenge that makes for Davidson County is companies go first. If they're looking for product, they go first to look at existing buildings. And most of the areas where these buildings are in industrial parks. And in those industrial parks, a lot of those places already have graded pads. So if somebody doesn't want that 200,000 square foot building, there's a 400,000 square foot pad down the road that they can do something custom to what they want. And that's a challenge for us, because a lot of times what that means is they never make the visit to Davidson County because there's not product. Now, I'm not telling you we've got to have a shell building. We're trying to work with private developers to entice them to come to Davidson County and do those things, so we don't have to, because I'm not too sure that county should be in the business of building shell buildings. But what I am telling you, that is a challenge, and if there are things that we can do to partner between the counties and cities to try to facilitate and make some of those happen with private developers, we need to be thinking about that, and we need to be planning and looking at how we do that and what makes sense for us. Debbie? So the EDC really has come up with 4 action plan recommendations for ourselves to be working on, and we thought it was important that when we made these, was to share this with you, because we want you to be our partner in these things. We need funding support for education and workforce developments, initiatives, that's obvious. We do need funding support for analysis and due diligence and site control when we can find the sites that we think make sense. That might be in the form of options. It might be in the form of buying property like we did at the I-85 Corporate Center, and then planning on how we do infrastructure and what we do. And we'd like to have that across the whole county, so that every area can continue to prosper in Davidson County. We would like to work with the county and with the cities and towns to create and implement a public-private development strategy. And so that we know if a developer does come and wants to do something and has an idea that we can, instead of falling back and saying, yeah, we'll get back to you. We need to go ahead and create a strategy that everybody can buy into and everybody's part of the same team so that we can move forward quickly and take advantage of some things. And then we believe we need to create and operate what we're terming an economic future growth fund. And that's taking measures to basically create a fund where if we can take advantage of putting a piece of properties under option, or we can take advantage of buying a piece of property, 200 acres somewhere 5 years from now, the money or some or most of the money would be available to be able to do that. So our recommendation number one, which I think is very important, and we'll go over some of this briefly. The Lexington City Schools has an initiative to become the first Apple Distinguished School District in the United States. It is something that nobody else has. And I mean, when we talk about differentiators, it's something that would make Lexington, North Carolina, and Davidson County stand out among everybody in the state. They have been working hard on this initiative. It does require some financial support, and if this is successful, then the Thomasville City Schools and Davidson County Schools might want to consider doing that as well. It's great for technology, it's great for the students, it's great for the teachers. We think it's great for the community. So that's an important thing that we would like to see funding support for. And then the next one is there's a lot of talk about getting kids educated the right way so that they can participate in other careers if they don't want to go to college, or they don't feel like that's the path that they want to take. There are ideas everywhere about industry skills training in the schools. We don't have a solution for that, but we think that should be a priority in what we're all looking at and how we make those things happen. We would like to see the Yadkin Valley Academy relocated into a new, larger school on the Link campus at Davidson Community College. We think that would be something that would, it would drive innovation. It would differentiate us from a lot of people, and it would have some we think it would have positive outcomes for the community. In the educating parents and teachers, there are a lot of communities out there right now that are spending millions of dollars to create videos and programs and all of these things for education and workforce development and career building. There are companies out there that already do this, and they've been doing it for years, and they're very good at it. It costs a tenth of what trying to recreate the wheel when they've already created a very nice wheel. So we would like to look at that and develop something that we can do that can be more engaging and really, for the most part, educate parents on the value of what we're talking about. And then we would like to see a workforce and economic development on the Link complex on the Link campus at Davis Community College. We believe if we could put together advanced manufacturing, and if we could put together economic development and the apprenticeship program and other things, when companies come to visit us, we wouldn't have to drive them all over the place. They'd be in one place. They would see a cohesive unit in Davidson County, and we think that would be a positive and work for everybody. And then we would also like to add, what I see when I go to different trade shows and forums with foreign direct investment is a lot of those people that are doing foreign direct investment, their initial idea is to have, they want to have a sales office in the United States. see if that's gonna work, and then go into manufacturing. Most of them, wherever they locate their sales offices, that's generally where they, at least if it's not in the county or the city where they are, it's in the state where they are. So we would like, as part of that, to create some kind of key man offices for salespeople, so that for those companies, so if I went somewhere and I was talking to a company and that was from Italy and that's what they wanted to do, and it looked like it was a good manufacturing company, they made a good product, they paid the people well, they did those kinds of things, that we could put them in this facility for a year and not charge them any rent, or charge them $1 a month, so that they would be here, they would be creating those networks, and if they did decide they wanted to move manufacture here, this would be a prime place, and we could just put them in the park, or put them in one of our other parks that we create. Next slide, please. The funding support and analysis due diligence piece, we'd like to be in a position where we could control up to 1,000 acres. And when you look at that sounds like a lot, but if you had 4 parks and one of them was a big park that would take the place of I-85 Corporate Center, when we fill it up, you're talking about, that's half of it right there, and so then you're 100 to 200 acres in other places. The other big part of that is infrastructure extension. As I've said before, what we're trying to do is find properties where we can limit the cost of those things, unless it's just an ideal piece of property and we can do something with it, and maybe just have it as a standalone piece that would be for a company like Egger, that if we located somebody like Egger to that site, then that would start involving the state and other monies that would help pay for that infrastructure. So we would not pay for that up front. We would take advantage of something to be able to, at the end of the day, rely on the state to help us locate another Egger company. Next slide, please. Our public-private development ventures strategy, one of those is we should look at what it would look like if we engaged a large regional or national firm to help us market our parks. They have more, they see a lot of projects that other people don't see, and they see a lot of them first, especially the ones that have brokerage and development. And if they're marketing our products, then they're going to bring those clients to our products as well because they're marketing those products. And then as part of that, especially if we can get somebody like that, that really helps to drive the possibility of joint ventures where we can get them to build speculative buildings or speculative product in our county versus us doing that and us being a partner in those ventures. And next. So the last one I'll go over is this Economic Future Growth Fund. Several counties have something like this, and they've been doing it for years. The sources of their fundings are grants, typically, that they can get from different organizations, local funding from support groups and foundations that want to be a part of economic development. And then a lot of them take, and it can get complicated, but when a new company locates and they're going to create an additional tax base, they will get part of that revenue to put in the fund to build that fund. So whether it's a new company or an expansion, that's always got to be net of incentives that we provide. We've got always to be considered that, but that's what some of the companies do. One example that I've already given is, we got almost $1.7 million from Commerce for us to buy the land at part of the property at the I-85 Corporate Center. So those are available, and they do come to, we can take advantage of things from time to time. So it would kind of be nice if we if we had a fund where we could put money in there and it would be available and it could grow. And then when we wanted to take advantage of that, then we would, as a team, get together and decide if that makes sense and if we wanted to move forward on things. So that's my presentation. Next steps, personally, I would love to see a workshop sometime in the near future where we get our board together with your board and other key stakeholders and talk about these things more and look at what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, how do we move forward, what do we prioritize as one team for Davidson County to do the best thing that we can to create capital investment and create good jobs. But outside of that, I'm open to anything that we can do to help drive economic development. The schools are working together. Community colleges is working with everyone. I mean, everybody's trying to drive the things that we need to do to help our people, and it's very encouraging. But there's a lot of work to do. And, there's a lot of competition out there. I think that we are considered one of the best economic development organizations in North Carolina. We want to stay that way, and the only way we can is to continue to work together and be teammates in all this. So with that, I'll open it for any questions anybody has or comments.
Actually, it's for Casey. Casey, we have taken some of our capital funds for EDC projects in the past, hadn't we?
We use mostly economic development funds. We have a economic development fund to usually pay incentives.
That's what I meant, yeah. But how much do we have in there now, do you know? Off the top of your head?
Around $2 million.
Okay. So how would that be different than a economic future growth fund? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't have any. I mean, we have those funds to pay incentives, and we do exactly what Craig said. We collect the tax, net it out, and pay the companies. So when they meet their goals, and they got to meet the job goals, they got to meet the investment goals. So
that's for that part. But how's that different than what you're talking about, Craig?
The economic growth fund would really be more of a development fund. It would be a fund that would be used to buy property or control property, or use that money for partnerships with private developers. It could be used to build a spec building, but I personally don't think that's something that I want to do.
I understand, but
it's for development. It's for product development, not for attracting and growing existing industry.
Okay.
Yeah. So we keep that. It would be kind of
a separate entity, but we would keep that as far as a county fund that you would have to come before us to get permission to utilize.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be something that the EDC wouldn't just start using. We would sit down and go, okay, here we have this opportunity. What does the board think? And here's what could happen. Here's the benefits to us. Is this worth using part of that money to invest in that?
I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead. I keep hearing the term "we." Okay, who paid for that rail? The spurs.
The rail spur.
Yeah.
North Carolina Railroad.
So in cooperation with Edgar, is that correct?
Edgar paid for the rail on their site.
Right. I thought that's what you were referring to when you said the spurs that go to the rail.
Well, you have to get a spur off of the. What they've got, you got a rail yard. We got a spur coming off the rail yard going to Edgar's rail yard.
Did EDC pay for that?
No.
Okay. When you talk about the CDBG grant and the $1.7 grant, who paid for that?
Who paid for it?
Yeah, who made the payments and paid that back?
No, it was a grant.
Yeah, but who paid it back?
It was a grant. There was no payback.
No, we got the grant, but that 700.
We bought property with it.
The $7 million was a loan.
$7 million.
So who paid it back?
Edgar paid that back. with their property
Casey,
purchase.
did we just pay that off?
Well, when we did with Egger to get the, deal with them buying extended land, we took the funds and we paid the grant off, so.
So there's no money out of the county's pocket that's paying any
That's
payments?
county money.
Okay.
Either way you
county
wanna
paid
look at
off.
it, right, that's county money, right.
And you, when you talk about deducting it from Edgar's portion, that would be an increased incentive, would it not? Isn't that the reason we give incentives?
I'm not sure I understand what you're,
I'm lost.
I'm not,
Well, you said Edgar paid that off.
Egger purchased the property from the county, and the county used that money to pay off that $7 million infrastructure loan.
But that was just good business. But what I'm
Correct.
saying is the county, who was responsible for paying that loan off?
The county.
The county.
Yes, sir.
I just wanna make that clarification because you keep saying we, it made it sound like the EDC paid all that off.
Oh, no, I'm
Okay,
saying,
so I want that clarification made that the county's been involved in this from day one.
Oh, yes, sir.
Invested a ton of money, and in my opinion, hadn't got the recognition that they should get for what's been done out there. It's been too much of this we stuff. And if you look at our contribution as compared to other contributions, it's a total partnership.
Mm-hmm.
And the county is heavily involved in promoting and has been heavily involved in promoting the Edgar site out there. And I just want that clarification made because it seems to be something that stays in the shadows, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Sir, I'd like to tell you, I thought y'all have done a phenomenal job. I love the presentation today. In the action plan recommendation number 1, where it talks about the engage a workforce education production company for programs and online support for teachers, students, the Lexington City Schools initiative to become the first Apple Distinguished School, I think that's phenomenal. I'm not sure if you've heard about the K64 program that Catawba Valley Community College is doing, but it's absolutely blown up the economic development in that region because local companies are coming in. They're getting students that are being trained to go into these manufacturing plants, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that we've got something that looks similar to this that's going to be brought here, I think that is phenomenal. I think that you've done a great job. I'd like to send kudos to the EDC for looking ahead for stuff like this because this is what's going to change my community. This is what's going to keep my kids here in Davidson County instead of going out somewhere else. And this is what's going to draw companies, legit companies like Egger. We're going to have more companies come in right here, and then hopefully my little girl won't have to go somewhere else and she can stay close to home. So I think this is a phenomenal approach, and I appreciate all the work and dedication that y'all have all added to this venture.
Well, I appreciate that. We actually visited Catawba Valley Community College and saw what they're doing.
Amazing.
And got a presentation on the K64 program, and it is very impressive.
Yes, sir.
And it does set them apart, and companies are taking notice. Now, as far as the Apple program goes, I can take no credit for that.
Yeah.
I am 1,000% in support of funding that initiative, but the Lexington City school system has been working very hard with Apple and has been doing a lot of things to try to figure out how they can implement that program and get iPads into every student's hands so that
Kudos.
And it's
phenomenal.
really it's a phenomenal program. And once again, it's something that if this can be pulled off, is something that Davidson County and Lexington City Schools can say they're the only ones that have that.
There's always somebody behind the lines that's working hard, and it's because teachers care. It's because, superintendents care, and they want to see the best for our kids. And it's just like these commissioners and everything that, we talk about economic development behind closed doors, and we talk about our students in our schools, and I guarantee you that every one of us have the same principles that we want our kids to stay here, to flourish here, and we want the best for all of our schools. So thank y'all so much.
Great.
Thank you for supporting us. We couldn't do this without y'all.
Yes, sir.
I mean, none of these things, we are keenly aware that nothing can happen without the support, and the funding from the county. You know, like I said with the Egger project, if the county hadn't bought the property, if the county hadn't gone ahead and gotten that loan to extend that, if that hadn't happened, if we had said, well, you know, we'll buy the property, but we'll wait on all of that, and we'll do that if we get somebody, Egger would've gone to another place.
That's right.
So, you know, it took, and that's a lot of money.
And I
We're
can't
talking
take
about
credit for that,
tens of
but the
millions.
commissioners that sat on this board that did that, thank you.
Yes.
Because that was tremendous for this county.
Yep.
Greg, when you talked about in your strategies, a mega site for companies like Egger, but then you talked about maybe various sites in the county with 200 acres or so.
Mhm.
When you talked about that, didn't you say in 1994 the commissioners at that time, approved a program to put, a site, Thomasville, Lexington, Denton?
They approved the presentation that Davidson Progress and the EDC made about the need for those things and to create fully served industrial parks that had shell buildings in them. Where Davidson Progress initially was talking about they were going to either fund them or partner with people, which is what happened at the Lexington Business Center, to create those parks. And then the commissioners approved that was a good idea and that they were in support of Davidson Progress moving forward with that initiative so that we could do that across the county. But the commissioners also wanted to make sure that they pointed out that all the parks shouldn't be located in one central place, or there should be one in Denton, there should be one in Thomasville, Lexington, and then in northern Davidson County somewhere. So yes,
Okay.
sir.
So Davidson Progress did do some, shell buildings in the Lexington area.
They built the first shell building at
Have
the
we looked
Lexington Business
at
Center.
the other sections? Have we looked at Denton? Have we looked at?
You know, Denton actually has been looked at. Denton has been looked at, and there have been some proposals made for industrial parks down there, but nothing happened down there. But I still believe it's a great place for an industrial park that would serve 25 to 50,000 square foot users. You know, I know we talk a lot about transportation, and it's not close enough to 85, and it's not close enough to a 4-lane. Companies, small private companies that are 25 to 50,000 square feet aren't as interested in that.
Mhm.
Those are for the companies that have hundreds of trucks going in and out every day, and they need that. Smaller companies just need a livable community, a place that has good education, a place where their workers can go grab a sandwich at lunch if they want to. So we can do that, and we can do that, you know, along 109, there's available property there, and quite frankly, with what's going on with the I-74, 73 corridor going through Randolph County, you know, there's properties that aren't in the city of Denton, but are in the Denton area that are fairly close to that might work. The problem there is infrastructure. You start getting out of Denton, you're starting to talk about putting a lot of money into infrastructure, and that there's at some point that doesn't make any sense.
But Denton is a wonderful place for metal welding. I mean,
It's the welding
most of the welders in the county, that's where they're from.
The welding capital of North Carolina.
Yeah, it is. And, good, solid, salt of the earth people, just like, well, all of Davidson County. But,
Yep.
I wanted to comment, what Commissioner Shell had mentioned, and I can understand sometimes that, you know, the county doesn't feel like we get all, you know, as much credit for funding stuff, because all those loans were on the county's back. If something happened and it didn't go through, the county had to pay it back. Just like the Apple program, yeah, the school system's wanting to do it, they're the ones that put the research into it, but then they're gonna come to the county to help pay for it, I'm assuming. I haven't had overly long discussions with them. But I also understand the WE project. you know, when we say we, you know, EDC is made up of all the municipalities, not just the county. We're the bigger funder, but, it's all the municipalities that put in. The Egger project was not just county or Lexington, it was the state, it was Congressman Ted Budd's office being instrumental because we couldn't get the railroads to call us back. He went to the lobbyist and said, if you wanna come and talk to me, you need to fix this, and a few days later, they had engineers up there planning it out. And we got it fixed and they even paid for it. So it is a we on that project, just like many others, just like Wilcox Bridge down here. That wasn't just Davidson County. We've had everybody in the country helping on that project, and we've got Part F grants and everything. It's been instrumental in seeing everybody come together. And now we've got Rowan County coming in too, but I can understand what he's saying. And I think moving forward, if we get that type of stuff, more, you know, this is why and this is how we got it. But I thank you for coming and bringing that to us. I would love to have more discussion about it, to see how we can change moving forward, because I also agree with Commissioner Elliott, and something I ran on a long time ago, almost 4 years ago, trying to make sure that my children have a job, just like everybody else's children. And some of the jobs that we're training the kids for now are not even developed yet. More technology, you know, I commend DCCC because they've been instrumental in Egger as well. They even sent people over to learn what they needed to do and had the first 2 phases of it figured out before they ever came back. And they're training people what to do before before it even opens. So Egger thought that was gonna be an 80-20 split. They was gonna do 80% of the work, DCC 20, well, it was the other way around.
That's exactly right.
You know, DCCC has put all the work into it, 80%, Egger's done 20. So every time you talk to them, they're preaching to their colleagues over in Europe, man, they have got it going on over here. And, so hopefully we can see more European companies come here.
Good, thank you. Well, you know, the great thing about Davidson County is we don't have to change. The only thing we need to do is improve. I mean, we've got a solid base of good industry, of education. We just need to improve on those things in ways that make sense, and we will continue to grow good jobs here and gain good capital investment.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. How many sites do we have out in Lexington Park that are not developed?
We have one site that technically isn't part of the park that the city and the county own together, that's 34 acres. It's basically, if you're looking at the, Master Brand building, it's to the right of it on that road that goes away from the park.
All right. And the one up in, Welcome is on, pretty much 98% or something?
Got one site left there too.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that some of the initiatives you were talking about back in 1995, I think, is when we actually started, let me see, I was elected in 94, so I think it was in 95 that we actually got to where we had gotten rid of a economic developer that wasn't doing a whole lot and got another one. And as a result, we finished, when they had their micropolitan area, we finished first in the micropolitan area 1 year and fourth in the micropolitan area in another year. And it's not that we haven't been doing anything. We have progressed rapidly from where we were to start with, and we have built a considerable amount of jobs. We had lost, 7,500 jobs in 2008, and over a period of 2 or 3 years, we had replaced most of those. So the economic development folks have done a good job, and what we were anticipating when we voted for the all-county plan was that as we go along, as we built one, fill it up, build another one, fill it up, and provide the jobs that we need and the economic development that we need. I was, I think a member of that Davidson, what was the other one besides Progress?
Davidson Vision? Is that-
Yeah, they had a countywide, plan that they put together, and part of that was that countywide plan.
Mhm.
But as long as the contribution, that each one of the entities make is proportional, I won't have a real big issue with that. So as long as that happens, but if you ask the county to carry their load, then, and the other ones are not, then I would not necessarily be in favor of that. And I think you're right, you need to prioritize what you need to do first. And if, the workshop is a way you can do that, then I would not be opposed to that, but we can't do them all at once. We have to do them as we go along, and we need to know what the priorities are. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the work you do. I'm particularly interested in the education piece, and if we do have workshops, certainly all the educational groups within the county need to be there. 25 years ago, when I was teaching, I was talking to my principal and to others about I taught English, so, we need, a technical English class. I'd be willing to come, and, it fell on deaf ears, but I think the ears are open now. And I certainly believe that would be, a good starting place. But thank you for your presentation.
But, in economic development, there are some things that just have to stay private, and that's why we have closed sessions.
Mhm.
But that's mostly around incentives and product development. Other than that, there are many things that we are doing and are going to be doing that need input by a lot of stakeholders.
Mhm.
And the workshop gives that ability to be able to put together those key stakeholders and people that are interested to see how we drive things. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's commissioners and councils that make decisions, but, a lot of input's good. It's good to have a big team.
I'm just glad you wasn't my English teacher back then.
Great,
I was
thank
just
you.
trying to survive.
I know.
Appreciate it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Did a good job.
Taking their time, thank you so much.
Math is my forte.
Okay, moving right along. The next item is inspection updates.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take this one, but
Okay.
I did wanna say, if these folks have day jobs, if anybody's wants to leave, we're about to get to the part of the agenda that I don't know if most of these folks wanna stick around for an inspections update, so if they've got places they've got to be.
Might have tickets, so we'll have a drawing.
50-50.
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna ask, our Director of our Inspection Department, Todd Hancock, and our Central Permitting Supervisor, Jennifer Goble, to come up, please, and Bo Charlotte, one of our Assistant Director as well. I'm gonna kick this off kinda at 30,000 foot, and then I'm gonna let them help me with some of the details.
Okay.
You've got a packet up there at your desk, with a lot of information here, but it starts with these blue graphs. And we decided not to do a full-on presentation. We do a lot of these in this room, so I just did paper this time. But a couple of weeks ago, or several meetings ago, if you recall, we added 2 part-time inspectors, you all approved, to get ready for gearing up, for things going on out at Edgar. And that's also to do 2 things. You got Edgar as one of probably the major job going on in the I-85 corridor in the southeast part of the United States. And then you've got our field work, our regular, everyday, commercial and residential things that we have to inspect going on in the county. We finished the year, look back, and we are continuing to grow in these inspections, and they're projected to continue to grow even further. So we've received way more permits in the first quarter than we did the first quarter of last year, and as you know, permits will lead to the inspections. The bottom line is the number of inspections per day per inspector, and I want to direct your attention specifically to the back end of this paper here, page 3, I think it is here. We're hovering around that 20 plus per day per inspector range. And the Department of Insurance recommendation, is usually around 12 to 13. You can see some of these counties are even lower. I've got you a little chart here. It kind of shows the number of inspectors, the number of inspections, recently. This is like 2019. And then kind of the support staff that backs those areas up. I try my best to tease out the permit techs from other support staff. Now, that other support staff could be is a department head or an assistant department head or plan review. Remember, these departments do plan review much like we do as well. So I try to give you a sense of what's going on in the background as well. And I'm gonna let these folks kind of talk you through some options, but I guess we're at the point now where we've got so many inspections and it doesn't appear to be leveling off to the point to where we either have to have a conversation about adding staff or taking these part-timers to full-time, or in lieu of that, they have an option that they want to walk you through to talk about that may provide an alternative so we don't have to add staff. Because one of the dangers with adding staff, as you all are aware, at some point in time the economy will slack up. And when it slacks up, it'll really hit them hard as far as there won't be any more building of homes, it'll stop. And it depends on the severity of whatever recession occurs, but they occur naturally. When that happens, then we won't necessarily need all of the staff. So it's kind of an ebb and flow. If you look back, one more page back, this one here, and we talk about this at the retreat every year, you can see that reflected. We're doing as many inspections as we were doing in 2007 and 8. Pre-recession, so we're back to this 24,000 number, and we're approaching now, we're gonna get closer to 30. But we did it back in the old days, I'll say, with 7 inspectors as opposed to 5. So, one more quick, just remember this in your head as they walk you through this option. We took a look at all of the inspections that we do that come in for the last year and a half. And so if we say to ourselves, 5 inspectors plus the 2 part-timers, let's just count that as 1, and say we've got 6 inspectors. At 20 per day, which is still a pretty high number, you're looking at 120 that you can do. We've been averaging 40% of an entire year and a half look back. 40% of the time we are above that number. And again, mostly it's seasonal, it's warm weather. We have days where it approaches 190. And so when you get all of those in, and you're obligated or you're self-obligated to do it on the same day, you can see where that causes a problem. You can't prioritize it almost because you're at 190 and you're well above your threshold. So what they want to talk with you about is a way to prioritize that, because the law says we don't have to do them within the same day. We have up to 2 days. And so maybe there's an option for deferring some out and trying to live within that 120 so we can do better scheduling. And we kind of bought a piece of routing software last budget year that was included in the budget that's going to help them route the inspectors better, more efficiently, given in that 120. They can also don't have to come down here in the morning and get their tickets. Maybe they can go straight to the jobs. But again, part of that is getting away from this same day. I'm going to let them walk you through these things.
Before we start, let me just ask one thing. Now, I realize some inspections are short, some of them are long.
Mm-hmm.
What's the average inspection?
I'll have to lean on them for that one.
Yeah, we don't really know time on task. Our system's not intuitive enough to capture that. It is based on complexity. Some are short, some are lengthy, but we don't know exactly.
And it's also based on experience, you know, if you,
Based on a lot of different variables, you're correct.
Commercial,
If you've had
residential,
yeah, so somebody has to ask questions, call back to the office, they might.
It's not linear, it's very variable.
Some of the things Bo sees out at Eggers, very complex, extremely complex, because it's a large commercial project, you know, as opposed to a home. But anyway, I'm gonna let them, Todd, if you wanna walk them through the same day.
So this management piece dovetails with the IT piece that we had y'all approved last year. And do they have the other jurisdiction policies?
Yes, at the back of your packet here, you've got the jurisdictions.
So in Rowan County.
That have same day or don't have same day, kind of what they're doing, very last page.
If you look at Rowan County, that's sort of the policy we'd like to go to. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd like to cut off the inspection request and then route those inspections that have come in through the routing software and push those out to the inspectors in the field so that they know a day ahead their workload, where they're going, and that way we'll be able to better manage, you know, the volume that comes in. 15% of our work requests come in same day. So what happens is every morning they have the dollars amount on that?
Yes.
Yeah, So when they come in the morning at 8 o'clock every day, they wait around till 8:30, and then we assign the workload, and then they leave about 9 o'clock. So what you see there is about $1,500 worth of human capital that's sitting there non-productive every week. And so what we like to do is back up the day before, route them, send the workload out, and put those workers to work earlier.
Electronically, you're talking about notification through electronics?
Yeah, that route will be sent to their computer, and they'll
Have them come to the office down here.
they will not come to the office anymore.
Cause we're spending money for them to sit
Good.
there and wait for the tickets, so
Good.
we're gonna spend money to send them to the jobs.
Roughly
Right.
15% of our requests, so 15% of our contracting community will be either left to the next day, which we can do, or they'll modify their behavior and call ahead of time and get on the schedule.
That's what they need to do.
But to be able to do this, it really boils down to leveling out the per day number of inspections you can do. You know, if you're self-imposed 120, which again, remember, that's at 20 per day for those 6, that's still pretty high. And it'll be seasonal. In the winter, it's 80 or 90 come in a day. We can handle that. So this won't be a regulatory thing we do every day. In the winter, we probably would be fine, as it's about approaching cool weather. This is more of a summertime thing. In your packet here, and I know it's difficult to pass back and forth to these things, but we actually have a little section here where we kind of chronicle the day where it got to 190. And so you can see, how many inspectors it's gonna take. It would take, given the 5 we've got now, to handle that 190 day would have took 9 inspectors. And even in the days in the winter where we're doing 80 and 90, if you average it out per inspector, it's still 13 to 14 a day, which is right around DOI's recommended. Again, DOI, I'm not saying that's the law, but I'm saying that's their recommended per day per inspector.
Yeah.
Some of that is, in counties, it's even tougher. In cities, as you know, is we gotta drive everywhere. The drive time's horrendous as opposed to right here in the city because everything in proximity.
Well, the big thing is, if you're pushed and hey, listen, I've got a case log that's like this and I gotta get all these done, you necessarily can't take the time to have the customer service that you might need to have with a contractor. Sitting there asking this or that. Well, I don't have time to answer your questions. I don't have time to do this. I'm overworked. I gotta go here. So I can see that. I would like it to be within that parameter to where, you could get 13 done and you could give the level of care that needs to be given. Can't hold somebody accountable if they're not given the tools to do the job. So
On the particular day of the 187, our plan reviewer, and a lot of the calls he and I get about inspections sometimes is about reviewing plans. For a long time, we went with one plan reviewer. For a while, and Bo used to do this. He used to be the plan reviewer, de facto inspections as well. So, Chris Whaley, who is our current plan reviewer, now we added one as part of the budget. So we added 2. And part of it is to keep that extended time to review plans from not growing, not getting out 5-6 weeks. But if you look at that right there, that particular day of the 187, Chris did 54 inspections.
Good God.
So how can he review plans if he's out doing 54 inspections? There's where you guys get the calls. And so that's why we get the traffic jams and the backlogs and the calls and people a little, irate about the process because, the inspection flow, it spikes so much in the summer and then it comes down a little bit in the winter, but we're not able to deal with those spikes, I guess. And those spikes are getting more frequent. If you take a whole year's worth of that 120 coming in, it's approaching half the year where it's above 120. So it's not just saying, in the winter I can get lightened up a little bit. It's starting to occur now more frequently. And again, what we don't want to do when we're actually offering here or talking about is doing this in lieu of continuing to add staff. If we do a little more automation and we try to level it out a little bit, we don't know till we see what happens with the numbers. Maybe it pushes it back down. We're hoping it will. If it's not, we'll have to be back with a conversation about what do we do.
Well,
when you said Chris done 54 in that one day, how do you do 54 in one day?
Some of them could have been fast ones, as you said, in the residential. If you're doing trades and you're talking about a gentleman who's level 3s on everything, probably him and Bo may be the best people as far as knowing the code in the whole county. So I would call him a full-on expert as far as seeing things and being able to get through them quickly. But you know, a lot of the inspectors down there have had 40, 42 in a particular day, and they do get, you're opening yourself up, you know, for
But
liability.
like you said, they're more driving in the county than in the city, so.
I think they probably try to get them close together. If he's gonna do that many, he can't obviously go from
Yeah.
Denton all the way north into the county. But they have their zones, and you remember we rotated the zones here recently, and that has nothing to do with this, but it's also part of just trying to get the consistency a little bit better. So whatever he did that day, he had to go in a certain place, obviously, but he's so equipped and knowledgeable of the code, it's like that. But it's still, again, it's 54, and you do open yourself up to, at the end of the day, you're not as sharp as you were at 9 a.m., you know, and so what we don't want to have happen is a liability issue.
Well, I believe he set a record.
Go ahead, Commissioner Shell, I'm sorry.
Todd, is all the any of you, is all the inspections that we do necessary according to law? Are there inspections that we don't really have to do?
Several years ago, there were jurisdictions statewide that required certain things, under certain inspections of different phases of the job, that those seemed reasonable at the time. It created concerns with our State Home Builders Association. And they went to our Building Code Council and they discussed this, and they thought in a lot of ways it became cumbersome. So they passed a House bill called House Bill 120. And that lists 8 inspections listed by the North Carolina Administrative Code Policies as required inspections. Of those 8, one of them is fire inspections, which doesn't apply to 1 and 2 family dwellings. So that puts it down to 7. And what that law says is a jurisdiction can only require those 7 inspections. Those 7 inspections unfold the systematic process of a 1 and 2 family dwelling on how they're built. There are other general statutes that support with that says an inspector or a jurisdiction would have to do as many inspections necessary to fulfill the life safety and responsibility duties of those 7 required. So in a nutshell, to say that if a contractor or a permit holder could manage their job and have it encompass what's required by code in 7 inspections, that's all our department can require. However, if they request something outside of those, we've always honored that, but we can't require that on our behalf. When that law was passed, our local Home Builders Association, as well as our contractors, they came to us and said, does this mean, you know, we gotta do this, we can't have you like we've been? And we said, no, we can't force you to have us on all these other platforms. We can only by law require the 7. But if you still, because you get situations where a plumbing license allows you to install gas piping, so does a mechanical license. And a contractor will have the plumber only do gas piping to the water heater, and he'll have the mechanical guy do gas piping to the gas logs in the furnace. There's all these dynamics that come into play where when that gas line rough inspection that falls in the 7 as a rough inspection would be required, all the people involved aren't players that are ready yet. So that leads back to the general statute that would say we have to do as many deems necessary to see that it gets done. So on that 7, for example, a foundation inspection. Some foundations have waterproofing, drainage, rebar reinforcement. Some of them have in company retaining walls that aren't ready until a septic system can be put in. And that might take 4 or 5 trips to go out to get that one completed on the list of 7. And it still kind of snowballs out. So if there were a way that a contractor could be creative enough to have everything encompassed by each one on the list by law, if we went out for that required and we could blanket that list, we could do it in 7 inspections. Since that law has come out, we have not had one do it yet.
Yeah.
And I'm unaware of a jurisdiction that really has. So the 7 are required, but what that entails to get with the complexities, for example, duplexes or townhomes, the footing may be ready on side A, but not on side B. It may have passed on side A, but failed on side B. There's things that come into play with porches and sunrooms and decks where, again, the footings can't be ready at the same time, but they wanna work. And though that's a required inspection, if somebody in our public wants to call and say, hey, can I have you come out and work with me as I need it to get this done, we've always obliged that. We don't, some of the examples used that initiated that House Bill 120 is we had jurisdictions down at the coast that were requiring a wall sheathing nailing inspection. That was a little over the top, I guess with their wind zones down there, it seemed important at the time, but that is actually something you look at on a initial framing inspection. They wanted to do, open floor joist inspections before a house was built because it was easy, everything was open and you could see it, and although it was convenient, it held a job up in the sense of you can look at that when the house is framed, like we've done for years. Now, we've had contractors that'll call us and say, do you mind looking at my floor framing before I build a house on it? Cause if something's wrong, that's key time and I'd like to fix it while it's open. And we'll oblige, but we can't force them. You know, we have to, if they don't, we look at that when it's a framing inspection. So having to explain that, and I've gotten guidance on the state because it was confusing when that House bill first passed, and I had them walk me through that, how the statutes work together to mean that. It does keep us from going beyond the required, but at the same sense, in serving our public and giving service, we've always honored them for the permit they've purchased. If they need us, we'll come. And that's where a lot of our volume comes from.
Do you keep a record of unnecessary inspections that you are asked to do?
As they're recorded, they would fall. They're not necessarily listed in our system as an unnecessary inspection, but they would be
Unrequired, I guess I should say.
they would be obvious as to which one of the required they would fall under. For example, in our bracket on a building permit request ticket, it's gonna reflect the foundation inspection, and it'll reflect everything adjacent to that that applied to that foundation in sequence as it was called in.
I tell you, my friend, I believe you.
Yes, sir.
I told you they know
Yeah.
between him and Chris, they're probably two gentlemen in this county that know that code. And you're talking about code books that are like this thick, so.
The customer service aspect of it to me is very important.
Absolutely.
I had a individual contact me, was it yesterday? One day this week, that had came down to the office. He wanted to get a temporary permit for his electrical. And he was talking to the receptionist. The receptionist went back, talked to somebody else 3 separate times. And finally, even the receptionist said, you know, it'd be a whole lot easier if you and her just talked. Well, so the receptionist went back, and then that person said, well, I can, but it's gonna take a while. Well, the guy's a busy guy. He's got a couple businesses. He's doing all this stuff, and he said, I ain't got time to sit and wait, because he waited around for a while. She never came. And I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, if the secretary or receptionist keeps coming to me, eventually I'm going to be like, okay, give me just 2 minutes to finish this email or whatever, but I'm going to go out there and try to iron it out. Because it was a back and forth of what would constitute having temporary power. He had one receptacle that, a lighting piece that wasn't up. And he said, I just need it temporary, I'll get that fixed. But anyway, the customer service aspect, and that's what I keep hearing, because when you have people that come into your office or that you do inspections on, and when it's something that is wrong and you've got a statute to back it, and I feel like most of the board here would back you guys, but when it's, whether it's an attitude or I don't have time right now, and I know that you're busy, and I do defend y'all for that, when they come to me, but that kind of thing, it keeps coming to me, and I keep hearing stuff like that over and over, or unanswered emails, or, the biggest one that I hear is an actual engineer will send over a plan, and then it gets marked up, sent back to the engineer, so then the client has to pay the engineer more money. Well, then they send that back over. Well, then they find things on the second plan they didn't find on the first plan, and it wasn't because they changed things that changed that. It was stuff that they didn't catch, so now the client has to go back and pay the engineer again. Well, this goes on 5 times. And to me, I think that if you look at it the first time and catch everything, I could see if they changed a wall and then that changed something, but I keep hearing those kind of things. And yeah, I wanna fix this stuff, but I also wanna see the other side of it fixed too.
I'll tell you, and before they respond, I hear that, but when you have your plan review officer having to go out and do 54 inspections, it's kinda hard, because there again, you can't give the detail to every plan review, because now he's gotta get up and he's not doing what his normal job is. He's going out to 54 places and having to do that. So, I totally agree. Customer service is huge in everything that we do, because we deal with the citizens, but can't hold you accountable for tools that you're not given. I mean, you gotta have enough people to do the work.
Yeah, but Chris, that was one day he did 54. The other days he did 0, 2, 7, and 10, and 1.
Yeah.
So that was one day that he did that.
That's true.
I mean, and granted, I agree with you. I mean, it's a lot, but.
It's a lot.
Anyway, but if y'all have an answer to that.
I would like to respond about that. As far as the day that you're talking about the other day, I'd be happy to meet with you and talk to you. There's 2 sides to every story.
I know, yeah.
But that gentleman was in our office for maybe about 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And he was, asked to wait for about a minute.
Mhm.
And we do strive in our office to provide the highest customer service that we can, and it's something that our employees do a good job at. And I would say that I'm very proud of our office, for the customer service that they do provide to the citizens in this county, so. And I'd be happy to meet with you and we could discuss that, and, if you have some suggestions, we'd be happy to talk with you about that.
In that particular instance, I got the call. So, I had to go down and I talked to him, and it's actually good, because once I talked to him, I kinda realized what he was doing.
Mhm.
He told me some things I'm not sure he said in the 5 minutes he was there. That's actually how we got the resolution. Because then I realized, he was also an electrical contractor, so some of the things he's doing, he didn't need a building permit, is what I'm trying to say. So we saved him from spending, probably $300 to get a building permit plus an electrical permit. Now, you may have to get an electrical down the road if he starts messing with fixtures, but what he's described initially was a $40 permit. So sometimes some of these things are communication, and Jennifer's right. Maybe if he'd have waited around one more minute, I'm not sure what she was doing at the moment. Part of it was probably getting some of this ready for me. I'm on the other end of the email pressing her, come on. So, she's, if he'd have waited one more minute, maybe we could have got that resolved. But having talked to him, I'm not sure, if it had took one more minute, because it took me 2 calls to get to the bottom of it, kind of what was going on.
That afternoon, I did speak with that customer, and we did.
But we did get it resolved.
And that's good, and I know there's always 2 sides. I've been so busy, I haven't had a chance to even talk to Casey or yourself about it. Matter of fact, there's a couple things I've still gotta get to Casey to work on, but, I just keep hearing things, and again, I know that there's 2 sides. His 15 minutes, yours is 5, and so, I believe that, but I just keep hearing things all the time about that type of stuff.
And part of our job too is on the social skills of it, is the right questions and the right answers on both parties. And it becomes a volley sometimes, where it's not always what you say, it's how it's heard. It's not always how it's heard, it's how it was said. And being able, you have to get in a certain lane to work with people, the different dynamics and their needs and their issues, and sometimes that can be really challenging. We do try to do our best effort, though, to the best of my knowledge, too.
Well, and I understand that inspections, a lot of times you have to tell people no, or it's not done correctly, or whatever. People don't like to hear that. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that. And then you get a personality conflict of, you got a builder that's been here for 50 years doing it. Here comes this inspector that's been in for 2 years, and they get upset. I get that. So anyway, one other question and I'm done. On option 2 that you have in here, Is there a way that we could structure it to where if somebody had an emergency that needed to be done that day, that we could charge extra for that? And also, the other question is, if we do it the previous day and set it up, and let's say I'm having an inspection done, but I say, please don't come till after lunch, is that a possibility to set that up? Because I may still be working on something, but I know it needs to be done, but I'll be done around 11, so I'll say, give me till 12. Is that a possibility? Because I understand they're back to back to back trying to get things done.
We always have room for emergency inspections. Typically, it runs about 3% difference monthly between what gets called in the morning and what actually gets recorded. A lot of times it's, in the spring, it's, storms, electrical reconnects, gas reconnects, things of that nature. So there's always room in the staff for emergency inspections. As far as, time appointments, we leave that up to the field guys and how they, because once the work gets pushed to them, even in the morning now, there's phone numbers for them to call. They contact their people and they use their discretion and use their communication skills to work those nuances out.
Right, but what I'm saying is there a place in there to put notes, like if I'm, okay, so they could say, hey, I won't be done till after 11. Okay, good deal.
What are you gonna do about foundations? To me, that's an issue as far as same-day inspections. You know, it's gonna rain tonight, I gotta have a concrete truck here this morning, I gotta pour it tomorrow, because if you don't come, it's gonna fill in those ditches, I'm gonna have to redo my work.
Footings, typically, we prefer, there's no penalty for calling and not being ready, or the weather, or for hitting rock, or any other unforeseen.
Yeah.
Once you get on our schedule and you're on our radar, we know about you, and we can make, accommodations for those kind of things. When we grant exceptions for things like that, we have to start granting exceptions for everything, so.
Like, what would compare to that? It's gonna rain tonight.
A final. What's the difference between a guy that wants to get a final inspection and close out his loan and get his money compared to a footing inspection?
There's a big difference.
It's the same.
It's a big difference.
Call ahead and get on our schedule, we can accommodate you, so there's no penalty for not being ready.
There's banker sitting he's sitting in a enclosed office. You know, he's doing his work out of the rain. This guy's out here and he's got a crew of people standing there waiting.
All you have to do is call and get on the schedule.
Well, that's what I was asking you, Todd.
There's no penalty.
And you said there was no difference, but there's a big difference in that.
Well, granting exceptions, we can't grant exceptions because we have to treat everyone the same.
So all the work this guy done to have a concrete truck there this morning is for naught.
If he would just call ahead.
No, he just needs to call and get on the schedule, and if he misses for some reason, that's okay. We're not gonna penalize him for it.
He'll be first up in the queue as soon as he's ready.
And there has been times people's called and something's came up and the concrete truck's there and the inspector hadn't made it. And, that had happened to me one time, called, well, hey, if you can take some pictures, put the tape measure down in there, show me it's the correct depth, it's the correct width, everything like, because you can get the width once you're there, but you don't know if it's poured at the correct depth, right?
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that.
but, I mean,
That's a discretion call that we typically, wouldn't get involved in an assignment.
yeah.
That's purely up to the field.
But when it's there and it's paid and everything's happened and we called on time, everything's there, now the concrete's truck here, you're calling, well, our guy couldn't make it. Well, I know that you couldn't make it, but now I'm paying for a truck of concrete and I've got 3 of them lined up, so let's, y'all have helped in that situation, so.
It goes back to what Commissioner Ross said, it's PR. It's not about us. It's PR.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to go with this thing, is how do we make things better? I'm not saying you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm just saying, the biggest complaints we get is potholes and inspections.
And trash.
And I do wanna ask Bo one question, because you're a reader, okay? You read the plans and all. Let me give you a hypothetical, and you tell me why it doesn't turn out. You got people that's building something. You read the plans, you okay the plans. Down the road, the inspector goes out there and said, oh, no, you gotta have bathrooms. Why didn't you catch that when you read the plans? Why did you approve something that you knew the inspector was not gonna approve?
Well, that would only apply in commercial, and in commercial, if bathrooms are required, that would be something that would get caught in plan review.
But I've had a couple instances where it didn't. And I'm not attacking you. I see right now the shortage of personnel's a problem.
Yeah.
When you got that many inspections, that's what the problem is. And that's something I told Zeb a long time ago, if it's a personnel problem, let's fix it. We gotta
Amen.
fix this problem. But, you know, you're pushed, but to me, I think those things could be caught at the reading process if you got time to do it. And I think that would alleviate a lot of these problems.
I thought you were going.
I think we're.
Okay, back to Casey a minute though. What are we asking for from?
Well, part of this is good conversation. Mr. Yates not here this morning. I'd like to hear what he has to say about this as well, because he's probably one of the main folks that calls me about inspections issues. So I don't know that we can get anything done this morning. But I think maybe we defer this off to a meeting. We can talk about this one night. Was what we're really dealing with, are we going, Mr. Shell hit the nail on the head. Are we gonna add more inspectors, or take the 2 part-time and make them full-time? Or are we gonna try to get off of same-day inspections?
Here's my thing.
Get to level out the workload per day a little bit.
We got a problem. We know what the problem is. Now we gotta fix it.
Now, the
like
same day,
Commissioner
I'm not
Shell said.
gonna tell you a story that the same day out in the world, we'll do all the marketing we can, we'll communicate this. We're not gonna do it tomorrow, obviously.
Yeah.
It's getting cold weather, we think we'd probably be all right, but spring gets here, we need to be ready. But my point is, if we do it, I'm not gonna say you're not gonna get a call about this, cause what's gonna happen is the contractors are gonna have to get a little bit better at getting on our radar. I hate this, but they're gonna have to get just a little bit more organized out in the field. And that's in lieu of us continuing to ask you all for staff. It's not like we're here saying we need to do these 2 inspectors. What we're saying is actually the opposite. Let's level out our workload per day so we don't have to keep adding inspectors, because again, when the economy goes down a little bit, we'll have bodies, and through attrition, you can do things with positions, but you're back to stuck again. Now you're spending money you didn't have to. So it's always a timing. It's a kind of a game that gets played down in inspections.
Well, I like option 2. I just think that you need to have some sort of, like an extra fee of $50 or $25 to do a same day inspection. But I like option 2, because then that gives you that leadway to say, hey, you're gonna pay an extra $25 to do it today, but if you'd call yesterday, it'd save you. Now, that's just my opinion, but.
How similar is that to Rowan?
Okay, so we got one for option 2. What you wanna do? Do you wanna put this off to Todd gets here?
I do think we need more conversation,
Okay.
and I think it's
I do too,
probably
I agree.
something we need to move
I
on to
agree.
another meeting. If we could put this maybe on.
Yes, thank y'all.
Yeah, I mean, sorry for inundating you with so many numbers, but it's good for you to get your head around, all right, there's a problem, now get down to
Great.
the 2 options.
It's
If we
great.
can continue this conversation, I guess on Tuesday night meeting be the only option, because we're out of information meetings. December's locked up. It would be January before we got around to this. So we'll have to do it at a meeting if that's okay.
Well, you the man, set it up.
All right.
Move to Tuesday
Yeah.
on deliberation.
On deliberation.
Commissioner Shell, I will say, and it's not every time, but there have been a few occasions where what the plan reviewer has been submitted was not
What they built out in the field.
what they built out.
That's
in the-
understandable.
And that's when the, inspector will say, this doesn't meet code.
Right.
But I'm not saying every time, but I do know a couple of situations that we've got involved in, that's been the case.
And I know the state runs a rough shot over us pretty much
I'll do
too.
it quick.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And that's what I think, they come in and they get a permit to build something, and then when you go out there and inspect it, it's something altogether different that requires a bathroom. I believe that's one that came up. The other one was at church, and I came and spoke to y'all. I have never gone to inspections when they hadn't been able to sit down and go through the situation and explain it. And it never, as many times I've been down, it has never been what the person said. It has been something like what the person said, but it's not been the same thing. In the case of the church, what they did was, the inspection department approved a plan, and then they go out there and build something different. And they go ahead and put the stuff in, and whenever inspections look at it, there's no firewall, and it's gotta come out, and some firewall's gotta be created. And what the people from the church saying is, well, they had it approved, and then they changed their mind, but that wasn't the case at all. So I appreciate what you do. You have a whole lot, to deal with that, people that come to you sometimes are trying to, get everything done, and these folks are not altogether dumb. And they know if they say one thing, they might be able to get by with doing something else, and they go do something else out there and hope they can slide by on the thing, and I've seen that. We had a commissioner one time, long time ago, that, went through inspections, and he wound up in a lot of mess because of it. You just have to take the time to do the job right, because otherwise you get liability involved, and, so I really appreciate what y'all do.
Two quick pieces, just so we'll know, have it out on the table. The number of calls that come in down there a year, Jennifer, I'm pulling this, so we get 26,000 calls to the permit techs. And one of the big complaints I get is the phone's ringing, nobody's answering. So I found out, I learned something yesterday I didn't know. So your stats for the calls are on one of the back sides of these pages. Average calls per month, about 2,200. Our average drop rate is 6%. That means 94% of the time we're answering the phone. And I'll tell you why we don't in just a second, possibly, as one explanation. The average length of time till the answer is 26 seconds, and then the average length of the call is 87 seconds. We do have a queue. Call the credit card company, you get a queue. I think it probably plays county standard music that we have on all phones. So there is a queue that I don't exactly know what it says. It may say something like, available next operator. That's if all the phones are locked down. Now remember, we get a lot of people physically coming in to buy stuff. So when Jennifer or the permit techs, whoever's with somebody, a customer, they may not answer the phone. Again, I'm not saying that's every instance. I'm saying that's a possible explanation as to sometimes why you all get calls about the phone didn't ring. Now, if they're in the queue, if they hang up, that's their option. That's part of what the 6% is. So I just wanted to get that out on the table. One more quick thing. Our plan reviewer, we've got two. We'll have two bodies now, two positions. We've got kind of a senior plan reviewer, and then we just hired for another one, so we'll end up with two. Our main gentleman who does our plan reviews, Chris Whaley, the opposite of Bo, kind of the two gentlemen I spoke of that Mr. 54 on the paper, he's departing us for another jurisdiction. I only bring that up to say it's going to create more of the whole on the piece of paper. So we're going to go through a little bit of a struggle period till we kind of get acclimated and get somebody hired for that. Finding plan reviewers, I can go ahead and tell you, in this environment, is very, very tough. There's just not very many of them at all, so.
What option do y'all prefer? You've got three options down here. Which one would be best for your department?
Going to next day inspections is ideal. It'll take pressure off of the staff. It'll take pressure off of our IT system, and it'll allow us some breathing space to gather more data and see exactly how much staff we do need to add.
So you're talking about option 3 being the best for your department? I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank y'all for listening.
So you're gonna set that up?
Set it up for next Tuesday night. We'll continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, moving right along here. Election equipment replacement. Casey, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your second packet of information here's got this big spreadsheet on it. This one's not quite as lengthy and a little bit easier to get through. I think we probably brought this on to the attention of the board, I want to say 4 years ago. As you all remember, the state kind of required everybody to go through their elections equipment, and they had, back 4 years ago, it was basically told we were going to have to replace it all. We have a plug number in our capital plan. I've had it there now for 4 years of almost $1.5 million to replace all the election machines. Where we sit today is actually at the cusp or the threshold of implementing this. So a lot of counties have gone through and made their moves. The elections folks are here today, and I'm gonna let them walk you through this, but we're down to 3 options now. We've got a full-on buyout of over 400 and some plus machines, which is about $1.5 million. It's actually around $1.7 million. You've got a ballot paper option, if you will, replacing all of the ballots and buying a percentage of the voting population at about 700,000, and then a hybrid option, kind of a middle ground, which in the email you have here, you see a list of counties and what they're doing, where it says hybrid, paper, et cetera. The hybrid would be buying some machines for early voting and using some of the ballot things for the regular voting. And the cost of that's on this front page here, and much less cost than the $1.7 million to replace all the machines. And also appears to be what a lot of counties are doing. We only have one county thus far, this list, that's deciding to do full-on electronic, in other words, replace all the machines, and that's Davie. Most of them are going to the hybrid or paper. For, Guilford's going full paper, Randolph has been on paper for quite some time. Some of these counties went to paper a long time ago just because they knew this was coming. But I'm gonna let, the election folks walk you through kind of the option that they're recommending, because it's coming upon time, we gotta get this implemented by the spring and have it in place. So, I'm gonna turn it over to them.
Okay. Mary? Appreciate you hearing us this morning. As you have heard for years now, the change in equipment is coming. Starting in 2020, all of the direct record electronic machines, which is the type that we use in our county, will be decertified by the state, so they are no longer able to be used. And that's actually effective on December 1. We just conducted the municipal elections this past Tuesday, and that will be the final election in which those machines can be used. In preparation for that, the State Board of Elections for the past few years has engaged in a process of vetting, where they wanted certain rules, regulations, and standards for the equipment that would be authorized to be used in lieu of the current equipment. So on August 23rd, the state finally was able to certify several new voting systems. 3 different vendors were approved by the state. One is Clear Ballot, one is Hart InterCivic, and the third is ES&S, Election Systems and Software. ES&S is the current vendor that the county uses, the current servicer and provider of our equipment. The state also developed a process through which each county had to follow in order to replace equipment, a multi-step process. The first step in that was for the County Board of Elections to attend demonstrations of all the certified voting equipment systems. Our board went to Forsyth County and sat through demonstrations, were able to ask questions, looked at all the different options, spoke to the different companies and vendors in order to vet and gather all the information we need to make a recommendation to you. Another requirement is that the system that is going to be recommended to the Board of Commissioners be tested in an election. We did that Tuesday. At the Wesley Heights precinct, we tested a certain system which we will show you today to meet that state requirement. We're required to make a preliminary recommendation to you, which is contained in the package that Casey has prepared. After today, getting input from you, fielding your questions, and hopefully sharing some thoughts together, then we are required to make a final recommendation which would be taken to a vote by this board. The system that we chose is an ES&S system. The thought process in that was twofold. One, we looked at the actual equipment, as I said. We looked at the different systems. We were able to see how they operated. We approached it from a voter perspective. How will the public react to this particular system? Is it user-friendly? Is it intuitive? Are the on-screen instructions easy to understand? We also approached it from a setup perspective and close-down perspective from our precinct officials. On an election day, how easy will it be for them to establish and get their precinct set up and ready to open and accept voters? At the end of the day, how easy will it be for them to close down, get back to the Board of Elections so that we can get results posted? So that was our second factor. Our third factor pertained to the vendors themselves. One of the vendors, Clear Ballot, does not have a presence in North Carolina. The state requires that any system that is used must have a location, a physical office location within the boundaries of the state. Clear Ballot does not have that right now. They all expressed a willingness to open if they were selected. But one consideration was, where will that office be? It could easily be in Raleigh. It could be in Asheville. It could be a geographic distance from us. And the question we had was, what type of customer service will we receive in the event of emergency if we need something during the election day? How accessible will those folks be? And we did have concerns about that. The second vendor, Hart InterCivic, also will set up offices, but locations are unknown, which fell to ES&S, our current vendor. Multiple offices in the state, headquartered in New Bern, but offices close by. And I will tell you, we have had issues in the past where we needed to reach out and get answers quickly, and they have been there. We have had excellent customer support. We have had folks come in on election day on multiple occasions, always easy to get on the telephone. So we had a tremendous confidence level in ES&S and felt like that would be the safest bet for our county, for the commissioners, for the voting public to ensure a smooth election day. Now, ideally, we won't have any issues, but even just a quick question, we wanted someone who was accessible. And in fact, we do have a representative from ES&S here today. Michelle Murzkowski is present, and she is going to, at a later point this morning, help walk through the voting equipment itself and do a demonstration for you. So for those various factors, we did choose to go with ES&S as a vendor. Even within that vendor, there were multiple options. And the one that we chose is the Express Vote ballot marking device. As we are familiar with, the iVotronics that we currently use have a touch screen. The Express Vote will also have a touch screen. So a voter will still appear at a precinct, have the exact same check-in process. They will appear at the laptop operator, provide their name and address. Verification will be given that they are a registered voter eligible to vote. They will be given that form, that ATV, Authorization to Vote form. The big difference in the equipment that we are presenting to you today is that rather than just have internal recording in that tape that rolls over to the left, all of the new systems, and the reason behind this change is a transition to paper ballot. There will be a paper trail. Every system that has been approved will produce a paper trail in different forms. The Express Vote that we are choosing, and you have the, no. Michelle is holding up what will be the paper ballot. When a voter is approved, that person will be giving one of those blank cardstock ballots. Nothing is printed on it whatsoever. It's completely blank. The voter will insert that blank cardstock into the equipment and then proceed on the screen to vote as has always happened. Race by race, contest by contest, changing pages as necessary. At the end, there will also be a review screen, just like we've always had, to make sure that the voter confirms, this is what I had in mind. And then that voter will hit the print or vote ballot button. And then all of the voters' selections will be printed onto that cardstock. The machine will eject that card, and then the voter will remove it and has a chance to review every selection that has been made. So in addition to the electronic process, there will be a paper ballot recording all of the voters' selections that can be reviewed. At that point, if it's all acceptable, the voter moves on. But if not, the voter can go back to a precinct official and say, either I made a mistake, this is not what I had in mind, I need to redo it, that ballot is traded in for a clean one, and the process can start over. One of the concerns that many people have had is whether electronic ballot marking devices actually record the person's vote or whether it's changed somehow. Part of the legislature's process in making these decisions was to ensure that the voter will have the actual selections that they wanted to make. Once the ballot is complete, there will be a separate machine, and that is called it's a DS-200 ballot tabulator. Each of our precincts will have to have one of these, regardless of which option you choose.
Precinct scanner.
But the card will be inserted into the tabulator. The voter will not see any particular selections or results, but will see the total count number increase as that ballot is taken.
Mm-hmm.
At a minimum, each precinct will need at least one of the express vote devices. That is for ADA compliance.
Mm-hmm.
If we have individuals who have visual, auditory, or literacy issues, we have to have one of these electronic machines per precinct for those folks to vote. So at a minimum, when you look at the paper ballot option only, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing enough to cover all of our precincts, to cover early voting sites, as well as the tabulators. So at a minimum, we are going to have some electronic equipment. During the testing process on Tuesday, I spent probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, at Wesley Heights during the course of the day, observing voters, getting feedback from voters, getting feedback from our election officials, and it was all positive. It was a very good experience. I think it would be well received by our voters. It was much easier to use and user-friendly, most of them said. So I was pleased that we made the selection that we did for testing because it did go well on Tuesday. In the options that we have, one would be using the Express Vote electronic marking devices countywide, replacing our entire fleet of the iVotronics with the Express Votes and having all voters at both early voting and on Election Day using these devices. The second option, the hybrid model, would be using the Express Vote for early voting, and our thought process there is it will probably speed the process and we'll be able to get more people through in a timely fashion. And then on Election Day, just use paper. And by paper, that process would literally mean an individual walks in to vote. Once they're approved, they would be given a clipboard, a paper ballot, and a pen. And just like with the SAT, they would sit, mark the bubbles for the individuals for whom they wish to vote, and then that full paper ballot would be fed into the tabulator. The third option is all paper. So a paper ballot both in early voting and on Election Day. You have the cost breakdowns before you. One way in which we have tried to be economical, you will see in your materials there is I think the third category, Express Vote, excuse me, it's the fifth one down, Ballot on Demand Printer. In past elections, the state has mandated that we have certain percentages of paper backup, and generally it's about 50%. So in a countywide election, if we had 100,000 registered voters, the state mandated, even though we were voting on electronic equipment, we had to have 50,000 paper ballots. Once that election is over, of course, those ballots cannot be reused. So in this expense that we have incurred and primarily did not need. So one effort to save money is through this ballot on demand printer. So rather than having to order a fixed number of ballots at a cost, what was it, Andrew, 13 cents? 40 cents per ballot.
Wow.
40 cents per ballot, and we're required to have about 50% of our total voting population. This machine is basically a printer that prints the ballots as we request them. So we can print the number that we need. We don't have to order stock in advance that would go unused and sit in a warehouse. So the ballot on demand cost was per ballot? 11?
Well, as far as the 11.
Paper.
Yeah.
For the
For the
paper,
paper.
for the ballot, it's about, it's like 18 cents, I think, or something.
So about half the cost. Half the cost, and we would not have to print any more than is actually needed. So there would be a cost savings there over the course of time that would be beneficial for the county. So we're recommending the ballot on demand printers as well because I think it will result in a cost savings. A third element for the board to consider, and on all of the options, it is listed customer loyalty discount and trade-in allowance. Once our equipment is decertified, it is of no use to us. We cannot use it again, and so we are going to trade that back into the vendor. We're getting a trade-in allowance for that. It's my understanding that South Carolina actually uses the same equipment. So the plan is for us to trade that in, and there may be some interest from South Carolina in purchasing that. So we will get a trade-in allowance for that. In the full electronic countywide system, it would be a trade-in allowance of over $205,000. So it would be a substantial benefit for us as well.
We don't have that price.
You know, when you talk about these printers, how many printers would you have to have?
Commissioner Truill, we're looking at getting 2 of them. They would both be stationed in the board office, and then all the printing would be conducted by our staff in office and then sent out to the various precincts or early voting sites.
So, but instead of printing 50,000, you might print 200 and send them out to the precincts.
That's right.
And then if they start running low, I got you.
And as you know, the precincts have different voting or ballot styles. So you may have some folks in one congressional district and not another. You may have folks in one school board district and not another. And so each and every election, we are sending multiple ballot styles to individual precincts. And we have to have sufficient numbers of each with a historical anticipation of how many might be needed. With that, we can reduce the number that we have to print, reduce the number that we would have to order, still have enough. And if a precinct official called and said, we're running low on ballot style 10, we can print off 20 more and get them out there in plenty of time.
Yeah, but I see your upfront cost, but like you said, over time, honestly, even at your upfront cost, you're still cheaper than what you're spending now. But next election cycle, your cost might be $1,000 if that to print them.
Yes, sir. You'll also notice in our quotes, our stands and tabletops.
Where's that at?
So it says the Express Vote booth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
And
got you.
ADA
And ADA kits, okay.
Yes, sir. Like our current equipment, the Express Vote can be used either upright in a stand, or it can be a tabletop. And we envision the precincts and early voting sites perhaps using both. So we have also provided quotes for the upright stands and for some tabletop privacy screens. The screens would be, for the tables, would have that trifold look that would allow a voter to vote in privacy and not have the neighbor cheating off the paper. So that is also included.
Is that enough for the entire county? Or is this for the hybrid option?
In each of those, we have included what we thought would be an adequate number under each scenario.
Okay, 'cause what, I'm confused. Is this sheet right here just the hybrid model if we went hybrid?
Yeah.
But if we go paper, would you still not need the trifold piece to go on top of a tabletop?
We would.
So you'd have to have more than 90 of them? Have what is it, how many precincts we have, 42, 43? Well, each one has 15 of them, I mean, or something, or whatever it is. So you'd have to have more than that, that's why I'm kinda confused there on that.
In the paper only, we do have a separate section that talks about voting booths and, tabletop options.
Yeah, X4 voting booth?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the
And
difference?
that is a per unit price that you see on the right-hand side. Those booths, if you can picture a round tabletop
Mm-hmm,
with a cross divider.
yes,
So that each station actually has 4 voting locations on it.
mm-hmm,
So it's not a 1-for-1, it's a 4-for-1.
4-for-1.
okay. So where it says 135, you're actually getting 4 times that amount.
That's correct.
Okay, well, now that makes perfect sense.
Mr. Crotch, you're right, the paper option on the backside of this email here, I just kinda printed the email that John and I were, or Andrew and I were working through.
Yeah, it's 700,000.
Y'all paper option isn't much less than this hybrid, and you're right, over time, you're gonna buy less paper and then less storage too, so the long game is, yeah, it's a little more upfront right now, but it's probably gonna be beneficial 2 and 3 elections down the road, you know?
Well, and that was gonna be, I was gonna get to that, 'cause I see here your pricing for going full electronic
Yes.
is 1.75.
Yeah.
But if we just went paper, it's 300,000, but we have most people voting early voting, is that correct, Mr. Myers?
Half.
Yeah, so to speed up the process, I can see the hybrid option, but I also see that you have to have the tablets in order to vote this way, and I can see that those would be going bad or going out versus paper, you wouldn't have that problem. So I can see the hybrid option being beneficial, just me, talking, but.
And if I can update the information that you have, since all of this was submitted, we have learned that both Mecklenburg and Haywood counties are going all electronic.
Is there a benefit to go all electronic versus hybrid or versus paper?
One would be continuity for voter experience. We have discovered in some elections, folks will vote early voting, and then others, they will want to vote in person. And it would be a different experience depending on which they chose. What would you?
So continuity as far as everybody would be able to have the same experience. Other thing, it would reduce the paper trail, after an election. Paper ballots just take up more space, and we have limited space in our warehouse as it is right now. And so that was one of the things that we were looking at as far as one thing we really liked about the express votes is that it really reduces the paper trail as far as space for our warehouse, because we do have to hold it for 22 months. And at that point, and after 22 months, we can shred or get rid of it, although we don't really we really don't shred ballots even after 22 months, just because if something ever does come up. But, so it was a reduce of the paper trail with the express votes, and that's one reason why, and far as the hybrid option, when we first started getting into this, we really liked the all express votes ballots, everything electronic, because that was really kind of the same situation that we were in now. After seeing the price breakdown and seeing what other counties were kind of leaning towards, we really liked the hybrid option, because that's going to reduce the paper trail as well, and with the ballot on demand, it would reduce the overall cost each election by just printing our own ballots as well. So over time, it will save us money in that aspect.
Okay, so
Just real quick, hello. One of the reasons that some of the other counties want to go to all, express vote, and by the way, South Carolina just implemented their first election that using this same setup. In South Carolina, they do all express votes for all voters, and this was the first time they did it. They just bought, so. One of the reasons they want to do it is because, paper, and particularly in Davidson County, you've been using the touch screens, and poll workers are not accustomed to the different ballot styles and handing them out. And one of the reasons many years ago that everybody was going to electronic is to avoid the mistakes of handing out the wrong ballot to the voter, because you have precincts that are split into multiple districts. And one of the reasons they like that is they didn't have to worry about the paper being handed out, to the wrong ballot style being handed out, and just the amount of paper that you would have to, manage. The other part of it is, another reason they went away from it was voter intent issues, because for some reason, if you hand somebody a piece of paper and a pen, they have a really hard time, following instructions.
Yes.
So, having worked for boards of elections myself many years ago, we would see people circle the name. Well, that goes back to a board decision. So then you increase the amount of time that the board and the staff have to review paper ballots if there's a recount. And then you have the whole issue with voter confidence, because maybe the totals change. So with the ballot marking device, you don't have an opportunity for a voter to be creative with their ballot. And that's another reason people like it.
We see that now during the mail-in absentee process. Some ballots are completed as they should be, and some have various marks that we will sit as a board and make a determination as to voter intent. Under any system that we implement, our big challenge is going to be instructing our election officials on how to interact with the voters, how to instruct the voters, and to ensure, as Michelle indicated, that everything is done correctly. So we understand that that's going to be a major point of time and energy for us, and we're ready to make that investment.
What's the lifespan of the equipment? It will be the touch screen, but it prints. What is the lifespan?
Michelle, lifespan?
ES&S continues to support equipment that's been out in the field for 20 and 25 years. But typically, what you've had for about 17 years, we would, if it wasn't decertified, we would continue to support it, until they just didn't make any parts and we couldn't find them anymore. But since we maintain your equipment for you, we make sure that it's up to date. There are places where they're still using 25-year-old equipment. Not well, but they're using it and it's still working for them.
If we were not before you today, based on decertification regarding this equipment, we would be before you indicating that we need to make some updates. The Ivotronic equipment has 2 separate batteries, and we have reached the point that they would need to be replaced prior to the March primary if we were going to continue with those machines. So it's not to say that once we make a purchase, we won't have to address something at one time or another. But again, ES&S has been very good in supporting us and making sure that we are up to date, fully prepared for each election.
Yeah, what I'm looking at is, and let me make sure we're correct, we're getting $90,000 now for purchasing our equipment that we currently have. If we went all electronic now, it's 200 and some thousand that we would get.
205.
So what I'm looking at is if we go to the hybrid option, we're at a total cost of $786 versus if we went all electronic now, we're at $1.753. If we did the hybrid now, then went all digital later, we would lose that $100 and some thousand credit.
That's correct.
For our equipment, so then we'd be at closer to $2 million. Okay.
John, do you have a contingency survey? Surplus? For example, if machines break down, are we purchasing extra machines?
We are. In the numbers that you see, we do have a number that includes extra that would be available in the office in the event that something had to be replaced. One of the other differences in this machinery versus the Ivotronic, with the Ivotronic, once it is used in an election, that particular voting machine cannot be reused for any other purpose. So if it's used in early voting, we can't then recycle it and put it in a precinct on election day. Some of this, we could. We could, if we had issues, take something from early voting and move it out to a precinct.
Okay.
So we do have a surplus automatically built in, but in order to prepare both precinct and early voting, since there's such a close gap in time between the two, we have enough to cover both early voting and the precincts. But the early voting machines can be recycled if necessary on election day.
Okay.
The other thing I will tell you in terms of voter confidence, and so the board knows, both under the current system and under the express votes, we engage in a process prior to every election called logic and accuracy testing. And that is where we put these machines through the paces and make sure that when something is touched electronically, it is correctly counted. That will be done here as well to make sure that everything is correct, and when the voter presses those buttons, it will print out with the correct marked ballot so that we won't have any concerns there as well.
And we don't want any collusion.
That's correct. But we do have one of the express votes present if the board would like to examine it and have a hands-on demonstration. And
Take a moment to set it up.
it will, and I've filled any other questions while Michelle's getting that set up.
What do y'all actually really prefer, the hybrid or the, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do y'all really want the hybrid or the full electronic or paper? What do y'all really want?
Tuesday, I went home and told my wife I wanted an express vote for Christmas. I really like that machine. I think it's very, very intuitive, voter-friendly. If we're having to make a change, I wish the county didn't have to spend money. But since we're having to make a change, I really think this would be a popular option.
Don't wanna muddy the water.
It would not hurt my feelings to have a full electronic setup throughout the county. As a board, we understand budgets. We understand the demands that are placed on you and on our voters, on the citizens. We wanted to present to you all of the options. I would be happy for you to accept the full electronic option, but from a budget standpoint, we thought the hybrid was also a good model.
$1 million difference.
I think part of it would depend on how you feel about voters appearing at a precinct on election day and voting on paper. Some of our neighbors are going to do that. It doesn't mean it's right for us. That's up for you to decide as well. But in a short answer, I don't think our feelings would be hurt with the express votes. It's a good system. It's a safe system and will be a good choice for the county.
John, while she's sitting up, just convince me if you can. Why can South Carolina use what we decertify and we can't use it? I mean, are they that far behind us, or are we that far in front of them, or what?
Each state is responsible for establishing their own rules and regulations, Commissioner Truill, regarding acceptable voting equipment. The legislature has decided that a paper ballot trail is what North Carolina should have, and that's why we're having to make this transition. But other states can use anything that their state certifies.
Right.
Other than having separate and distinct paper trail, I'm still happy with the Ivotronic equipment. I don't know that it was necessary for us to make the transition, other than being forced upon us. So the change is not because of the shortcomings of our current system, but rather moving back to a paper trail that is more auditable. And I will tell you, post-election, the state indicates to us which precincts we're supposed to audit, which races we're supposed to audit, and we actually do a hand-to-eye count using that paper roll that's on the side of the machine, and we do a hand-to-eye count to confirm that the paper marking matches the electronic totals. Again, just to ensure the integrity of our systems. And we don't have issues. We have done well in this county over the course of the years. Post-election audits have gone well. So a long answer to say, I don't think there's anything wrong with our equipment, and it's certainly fine for another state or jurisdiction to use them. We're just having to transition based on our legislative dictates.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I know it's been a while now, but it doesn't seem like long that we had to do some switching, it wasn't that many years ago.
Yes, sir.
And Don, you're talking about a state that can't fix all their potholes, so.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, go through the process with me. As stands on this hybrid, going with this hybrid choice, I don't know why my voice is so scratchy today. Early voting will have all electronic equipment, but if you vote on election day, in all precincts, we're all gonna be voting paper where we choose.
That is the hybrid option.
That's the hybrid option, okay.
Other than the one ADA compliant machine per precinct.
Okay.
But the regular voter without disability will be voting on paper.
Okay, gotcha.
The ADA would be that?
It will.
Yeah.
The ADA machine will allow a visually impaired voter to expand the font and see the much larger print. It would allow someone to have it will actually read the ballot to folks for those who are illiterate.
She done put that up earlier.
Or for those who are blind, so it will cover all of the options that are required under the ADA federal guidelines. So each precinct and all of the early voting sites will have to have at least one ADA machine.
Okay.
And all of them will have at least one tabulator.
And another question, and this is just for people that are skeptical about how safe things are. If the person looks at their ballot and says, no, this is not right, and they take it over and you get another ballot, are they, the one that there's rejected, does the person that's in charge there take that ballot and do anything to it visually so that that one is destroyed or not used or folded, or what's the process on that?
Our precinct official for every ballot that is turned back in is to write the word spoiled across the front, so that there is a record that it was marked but not counted.
Okay.
And at the end of the night, that would be returned to the board office with all of the other equipment and supplies.
Okay, good, thank you.
Just for clarification,
Think you're going.
that's only for ADA individuals that's dealing with the electronic device. Anybody else would be filling out a paper.
In the hybrid option and paper options, yes, sir.
How long would that add to the process of getting results back in? Because I know you're sitting on the other side looking for results to come back in. Would that add an extreme amount of time to that, or do you have a scanning device that you put that through once it's validated and it reads?
The variable would be the length of ballot and how long it takes an individual to complete it. Once a ballot is voted, Commissioner Elliott, you'll see on here, we have marked for the DS-200 precinct scanner. That is, it looks like the size of a trash can, recycle bin. And on the top, there is a screen, and it should be in your supplies.
The DS-200, that's your tabulator that is in every voting location. Okay.
And you feed, whether we use the cardstock type ballot or a regular size full ballot, it accepts both of those. The voter will feed the ballot into that scanner. And that's what collects the ballot data. So, in terms of close down, it doesn't matter if we're using paper or electronic for return of results.
So we'll have one of these at each precinct.
We will.
Put it in, okay.
Your question goes to how quickly can a precinct close down at the end of the night? The one variable on paper in a busy election such as we would expect in March and then again in November of 20, how many people are still in line and voting at 7:30? Because we will have to wait for all of them to finish before our officials can start the close down process. So the paper ballot could easily take an individual longer to cast than the electronic style. But the rules indicate that anyone who is in line at 7:30 is allowed to vote, regardless of how long that line may be.
But what's the machine that tabulates those? Is that the? Oh, so it's the same exact one? So it's the same one for that versus a regular?
It's the same one.
Okay, so what is this right here?
That's a high-speed counter, and
You-
that's, you guys are only looking at the.
You will note in what we have provided to you, we have requested
Yeah, I see
a
one of them.
DS-450.
Okay.
In the paper-only options, that is number 2. That is a high-speed counting device that we would have at the board office. It would be used for processing mail-in absentees. It would be used in recounts. It would be used internally if we had to do any other audits. So it is not a precinct piece of equipment, it is a board office piece of equipment.
And that would be able to tabulate the narrow ones or paper ballots?
That's correct. It also has a sorting mechanism to it. So we could say we are only interested in capturing voters from Arcadia. We can plug that in. We are only interested in capturing the race of county commissioner. It will separate. So we can use electronic input to scan and separate, or we can just recount the entire ballot itself.
Wow.
As it currently exists, and you may recall we have had recounts, the equipment that we have now, we have to hand feed. And I have stood at those equipment for hours, ballot by ballot by ballot. Another feature that I really like about the DS-200 that will be at our precincts is the jamming feature. If something is fed into it and jams, it does not count the ballot. It does not count until it's fully received and drops into the bin. So you don't have to question whether or not the counter clicked when something jammed. So one of the things that we emphasize with our officials is balancing over the course of the day to make sure that their paper authorization to vote forms, which we have them number, matches the number of people who have either voted on the equipment or placed something into the DS-200. Here, they can see, all right, we have 50 ATV forms, we have 50 ballots fed in, we're in compliance. So it will make the precinct official's job easier during the course of the day as well.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. This is all interesting to me. On this one here, I see it looks like a camera. Is that what that is, or is it a scanner? Up here at the top right corner. No, right here, like on the machine.
Oh, that's interesting that you saw that. That's, not something that's part of the certified system in North Carolina.
Okay.
But that's a piece that people can actually go online and vote their ballots and get a QR code and scan their QR code, and then it will make all the selections and print their ballot out speed of time.
Oh, that's cool.
But we're not doing that here.
Yeah.
But it is upgradable.
I got you. Okay. The other question, I know that at the precincts, we always print the precinct roster. here I see that you check in through an electronic poll book. Is that still accurate, or is that North Carolina's not doing that?
We have used electronic poll books for a while now.
Okay, I was thinking we did, but I knew we used to.
That's why we have the laptops at the
Okay.
precincts when you first check in. Those are the electronic poll books.
Okay, so will y'all still physically check people in, or will you have like an iPad there that
We
they can check in?
will, no,
themselves?
the
Okay.
check-in process will be the same.
Okay.
You will appear at the precinct. The statutes require that the voter state his or her name and address, and then our precinct official goes through, confirms that that person is registered, and that's when the ATV form prints. So rather than have the old physical paper books where you had to look and put a sticker, it is electronic now, so it's an electronic poll book that we currently use. And on that note, speaking of aging equipment, the laptop check-in process is, I think, here to stay. The laptops that we use have aged tremendously, to the point where we were beginning to have some issues. In fact, we had some issues on Tuesday with one just being so slow it didn't want to work. We are also making a request today, and I hope Casey included that in your package, for replacement of our laptops for the check-in process. Some of them are still good and we can continue to use, but we are requesting 110 laptops for the check-in process.
Yeah, that price was what, 80,000, 90,000?
It was, and we went through the IT department, we got Mr. Hartley to do some pricing for us, to get the county discount and volume discount. So what you have before you is the choice that we have made based on his work and our needs.
Yeah, and as far as the laptops, that was not something that we were expecting. Windows is basically not giving out Windows security updates anymore to Windows 7. So the states has made a change with that, saying that basically none of their systems will work for Windows 7 starting on January 1st. So we're kind of, our hands are kind of tied because we in order to use the state system, which is what we use on election day, we use the free state system. We have to have at least Windows 10. So.
Well, if you were at Windows 7, you'd have bought them in what, 05? Is that right?
We bought the first wave of our laptops we bought in 06.
Okay, 06. I mean, you've had your use out of them. You're not going to get more out of them. Okay.
John, is there additional cost to that for a yearly maintenance package
For which one?
for these machines?
There will be.
And how much will that be? Okay.
Michelle, can you get guidance on that?
I don't have your numbers in front of me right now, but I do know if you go with the hybrid option, that cost is gonna go way down because you have fewer pieces of equipment to be maintained. I know that you guys did your own kind of form based on the quotes we sent, so it was like down at the bottom, we show what it is, but everything, and it's also much less expensive to maintain this equipment than it is the older equipment. So it has been, maintenance has been going up over the years because of things that have to be done.
What about compared to the full electronic machines?
Going full electronic versus hybrid, the cost difference.
See, we need to know
maintenance.
those,
Yeah.
we need to have those numbers before we, I think,
Yeah,
before we make
I
a.
wasn't even thinking about that.
We'll pull that together for you.
Commissioner Shell, we are, and I'm reading from the state guidelines that we're required to follow. We have to maintain any software license agreements. We have to uphold annual maintenance agreements. And notify the State Board of Elections of every repair.
I mean, I don't have any problem with that. What I'm saying is, you do a comparison, would it be cheaper to go the other way? In the long run, or nearly as.
It would make more sense that it's going to be expensive the more machines you have.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Say that again.
The more express votes that we have, you would think the higher the annual maintenance agreement cost would be. But we need to get those specific numbers for you.
And this is your recommendation of your board after looking at all the things?
It is.
That we go with the hybrid?
The hybrid.
But is that in lieu of the maintenance package?
No, sir, we would still have to have a maintenance package for
Yeah,
the.
but you gotta look at the cost of that maintenance package.
They said it'd be far less than the electronic.
Now, the initial cost covers the first year.
The first year is covered, there's not an annual maintenance cost, it's all like under the first year warranty, but beginning in the second year of use, to keep it covered, there will be a fee, and I just have to pull that. Okay. So it's, the most expensive maintenance package is if you go all electronic, you go all express road. And then the second would be the hybrid model, but that would still be far less than what you're paying now. And you would get a year that you wouldn't have to pay that. I think right now you're paying $75,000 a year in equipment maintenance. And so that would go down significantly.
Even going full, all digital, all electronic, it would still be less than
It
75,000?
would still be less because,
Okay.
This equipment per unit maintenance fee is much less. One of the things ES&S did when they designed this equipment was make it easier for field technicians to get in and repair anything very quickly. So everything's accessible via a key instead of having to have a toolbox to, hack into it. That's a bad use of word, but to get into the machine. Flip up there. The other thing that I was gonna mention, and it's been on the tip of my tongue for about 30 minutes, and it will go away if I don't mention it, is that this printer that prints these express vote ballots is thermal. So you never have need toner or ink or anything like that. The ballot on demand printing will require the county. It's something that probably we haven't talked enough about, to purchase drums and toner and that sort of thing. So that's a little bit of a hidden cost there. If you went all electronic, you would never have to do that because it's thermal paper. And,
When it's talking about the benefits of it, I'm a little bit confused when it says maintenance, upgrades, repair, and labor are all included, but yet there's a separate maintenance charge. I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
included
In the maintenance services.
in the maintenance services. Like, it's just saying, if you use
If you purchase that.
our maintenance services, we include everything that has to be done to maintain the equipment.
Okay, but I think what I was getting around to was, without knowing how much labor, how much, parts and all, that maintenance covers all that, or is that those parts and all in addition, excessive parts?
It covers it if it's under warranty. One
Under
thing
warranty.
that we were talking about earlier is after 17 years, the batteries in the Ivotronics were no longer under warranty. So that would be an additional price. As it ages, there might be some things that fall out of warranty, kind of like with your car. But to keep it maintained with just general maintenance and any of the parts and pieces, as long as, it hasn't been dropped and the screen's cracked and we have to provide a new screen, that's more of an insurance matter.
But at the same time, as that equipment gets older, your yearly maintenance goes up too.
It can, but one of the things we do is we lock you in, 5 years at a time, so you can plan. It doesn't go up every year, and it never goes up more than 5% at any increase. So for 5 years, it would be a fixed price, and then the next time it went up, it would go up no more.
Sometimes you can get gun shy with them things. If you remember Motorola, it was almost $1 million for maintenance.
We try not to sneak up on you. We really do. We try to put it all out there in the beginning.
The only problem I've got with that, to be honest with you, is you don't have the price of how much maintenance is gonna cost us.
He's working on it right now. He'll have free to spend it. Because we did send it, just didn't get.
The one thing I can add is that all of our neighboring counties and the majority of the state that are having to transition will be using ES&S. A handful are going with the other vendors, but the majority are going with the same company.
Have we checked with South Carolina, see what they're paying maintenance?
I have not.
They just, I think they just signed a $60 million purchase deal. The state buys everything in South Carolina. So it's not on a county by county basis. And so the service that we provide there is somewhat different than it is here because it's the whole statewide thing, and there are staff people at the state who assist in some of the things that we do for North Carolina. So it's a little bit of a different deal. I can't remember, it's online, the whole contract that, ESNS had with South Carolina. And so you can see sort of what that is, but they have, I wanna say like 11,000 pieces of equipment. And so it's not parsed out by county, so statewide.
Besides the dollar amount, whenever you, were out with at the voting place, do you think that the, voter is going to be more, satisfied with the hybrid model than it would electronic where they don't get anything?
They will be getting something either way. Even with the electronic model, they will still have that piece of paper.
Okay.
It is fed in, person votes, and it comes back out. And then the voter will take that ballot, walk over to the tabulator and feed it in. So it's still a tactile experience.
Right.
One thing I noticed is that the voters really enjoyed the process of receiving a ballot and being able to feed it, knowing that it was counted. That they seem to really enjoy that experience. And either way we go, whether it's a hand-marked ballot with a fill-in-the-blank bubble, or this where it's all pre-marked and then it's simply fed. Either way, that voter is going to take that ballot and personally feed it into the tabulator. So the experience will be good for them either way, because I think that seems to be something that went over really well for those that I observed. In fact, that was my precinct. So I was able to actually vote on this equipment and feed it into the DS-200. So I voted that way on Tuesday, and it was a good experience.
John, the machine that's at that reads them, is that the one that has the drum that we'll have to have ink for?
No, that's this one.
No.
This is the thermal printer.
Yep.
The one that prints the ballots.
Yeah, the one that you walk over and put in.
It's just a tabulator.
Tabulator,
So
it's not
it does
something
not
that-
print anything.
Okay, but
It would not have a
okay.
drum or
Okay.
any expendable supplies.
Okay.
So there'd not be
Not
an ongoing
associated
cost.
with that, okay.
I think she's talking about the on-demand printer that Michelle was
Yes.
saying. You would
The
have to have
on-demand
printer
printer, where we were actually printing the physical ballot.
Uh-huh. That one. That's the
That is
one.
comparable to any office printer.
Office printer.
So yes, you'll have toner, you'll
Mhm.
have drum, you'll have the standard issues that are incurred with office equipment
Yeah.
on those.
Okay.
You will.
Now, is this sheet, everything that you're asking for is on this sheet? Those laptops?
That's in a separate.
That's
Yeah,
separate.
I didn't wanna muddy the
from this.
water except for that
Okay.
issue there. I was gonna bring that up last.
Okay, that's what,
Yeah.
so this number is not accurate.
Well, they're separate issues too.
Yeah,
We've got
okay.
some out of warranty laptops that they need to replace.
Okay.
And so that's a quote, separate quote on the
The
back.
quote that you have there, Commissioner Watford, is just based on the statutory mandate that we replace voting equipment.
Gotcha.
We would have been coming to you regardless on the laptops based on the Windows lack of supporting Windows 7.
So it's 66 for
I know, I just couldn't find it on there,
The
so.
whole thing's 853, you know, because we've
853.
gotta get them these out-of-date laptops
That's
replaced.
if we go with the hybrid option.
Right, correct.
On the hybrid option. Okay.
And then it's gonna be 60-some thousand if we just went all paper. Is that right? Or no, it's
I
700,000.
think the paper option is upwards of 700 as well, because
So
you've
it'd be
gotta
right
buy
at
so
800,000 if you
much
just do
ballots for
paper.
the percentage of the voting population.
Now, while you have multiple options, I don't want to muddy the water any further, but I do want to relay to you the process that the state has mandated that we go through. We are only allowed to make one recommendation to you for a system. And we have recommended thus far, in our preliminary recommendation, the hybrid option. You are not required to accept our recommendation, but you're only allowed to vote it up or down. If you don't choose the hybrid option, then we, as a Board of Elections, would have to meet and vote for a new recommendation for you to consider.
Oh, okay. See, I wanna look at the total cost of everything versus hybrid versus full electronic.
Andrew and I figured, based
I would think that
on what the annual maintenance.
I would think what they recommend is the
Yeah.
best.
twice.
Cause they've been doing this for years.
Just whatever they recommend, you're right.
I know it's more money.
I mean, we get to the point where we're trying to do their job, we ain't done it.
I ain't trying to do
And see,
All right, we do have the numbers for you, Commissioner Shell, on the,
good.
maintenance. The first year will be covered under our purchase. Beyond that, the annual maintenance for paper would be $30,320. So paper would be $30,320. Annual maintenance for the hybrid option would be $43,000. And annual maintenance for the all express vote would be $94,000.
Okay, that answers my question.
So for the hybrid that you're recommending,
$43,000.
$43,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll have the additional for the paper, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so he's got a
Probably not $50,000.
One of the advantages of the express vote card stock that you've seen is that it will be continual from election to election. So we can order a base number for the office, and if it's not used in March, it will still be good to use in November. So it will continue from election to election. We just have to keep enough on hand per election. And for the ballot on demand, you're looking at regular sizes of paper.
Yeah, but that paper, the thermal paper, cannot be in a storage building that would get hot. It has to be in a cool.
It should be in somewhat climate controlled, and we recommend that you leave it shrink wrapped because it's swelling. One of the things I would be remiss if I did not bring up about Election Day pre-printed ballots. The only reason I bring it up is we ran into it recently in a couple of our counties. When we had an election day, there was a lot of rain. And it's, for counties that have always used pre-printed paper, they know to warn voters about getting water on the ballot and moisture issues, and they sort of know where to place their tabulators so that if they're in a fire department bay, they don't have it where the wind and rain is blowing directly in and on the machine. But in a couple of counties that had been accustomed to IVOs, they had some issues where voters have their jackets on, they got their ballots wet, and they put them in, and it made the inside of the scanner wet, and it threw an error because it created a shadow, and it was, kind of a mess. So that's the only thing that you have to watch for, and that's a training issue. So I'm sure these folks would do a great job of letting them know that. But just so you're fully informed, one of the other reasons people don't just jump at the chance to go with paper is things like that, with the voter interacting with it. So there's that. And there was one other thing, and I forgot what it was, so I'll think of it.
Okay.
Well, you remember the whole lot.
So you're recommending the hybrid express votes, the recommendation you gave us?
Yes, sir.
Is there consensus that we put it on the consent agenda for November 12th, or yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, one other issue we do need to get, and I was just talking with Chuck about it, we need to get an actual agreement, I think, from the company here and go through it. And I think Chuck needs to look at it as well, so
Is the price that you have presented negotiated through the state?
Yes, except you've gotten a benefit of the trade-in, but the amount that's quoted on the quote form is a state set price. So it's the same for everyone. Just because we're taking some of your old equipment, you're getting a benefit.
When can you have a proposal ready for us? When can you have a contract?
In about a week.
Okay.
I think it's about a week for that.
And can you provide any documentation you have from the state to us, showing how that price, or how those prices were established?
The state Board of Elections has that. So that would be,
I can work on getting it.
yeah, we get that.
Thank you.
Well, the other issue is if it's past a week, it's gonna put us into the next board meeting, I guess. So I think, John, as long as they kind of get on a pathway to getting toward the spring, they're okay.
One of our concerns was the tight timeline for implementation of the new equipment. The presidential primary will be in March rather than May. early voting will begin in February. So we are looking at a tight timeline to get
Right,
everything
right.
ordered, received, quality checked, and trained.
Yeah,
So-
being as that we don't meet in December.
Well, if she can have the agreement back to us, actually as quick as possible, will obviously be helpful. But if it's a week, mayor's heard a week, that's gonna put it past making it to Tuesday night.
Is the
Obviously.
maintenance automatically included in that agreement?
It is.
Okay.
And to answer Mr. Fry's question, the issue of pricing was raised at several of our meetings as well. And the State Board of Elections in this process determined that a larger county such as Mecklenburg should not benefit over a smaller county such as Davie in pricing in terms of volume. So they did set standardized pricing so that everyone would be on equal footing.
Good.
Or could this,
Your position that this is sole sourcing from the contract standpoint? Or we can talk about that afterwards. I'm trying to justify how we're following this specific bid and not looking at competitive bidding, but we can talk about that afterwards. Thank you.
well, could this be contingent with your approval of?
Well, we'll certainly bring it back with
Yeah, I think we've gotta, obviously we gotta lay eyes on the actual agreement. Today was just kind of the conversation about how to do it. Chuck's right. I mean, there's been we found some evidence of, because the state's prescribed this basically, my hunch is it's basically a sole source agreement. They've kind of negotiated who they're gonna use and the pricing, but we need to get to the bottom of that. I don't know that we'll get to the bottom of that by Tuesday, is my point. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it'll probably be the second board meeting in November before we can get this back.
Are you wanting to get this stuff purchased and use it in the primary?
That's what, our current equipment is decertified on December 1. We
Oh,
can,
okay,
we
okay.
cannot use the IVOs, we
Well,
must
that's what I was
use the new
thinking,
equipment.
but then something you
Beginning
said.
in-
Now, one of the things we can approve is the out-of-warranty laptops. We can move that to Tuesday. That's not a problem. So if everybody's in agreement with that, I can put that on a
That's fine.
budget amendment. We can make that happen. So
Okay.
they can go ahead and order those and get those out of the way.
Okay, y'all have done an enormous amount of work to get to this point, and we appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it was a short time, cause they wasn't even, approved until last month or
August
two?
23rd.
Yeah, so y'all done a lot, yeah. Thank y'all.
Thank you, John.
So we're
Good to go.
We're gonna work with them to get an agreement, and we're gonna put the laptop replacement on, but we're probably gonna shoot for the second meeting in November for the full-on
Okay.
vote machines.
Motion adjourned? Second. Yeah. Yeah, you want to
motion to adjourn.
Look at it.